Hey guys, tonight we're leaving behind the modern glow of smartphones and soft beds to step into a world ruled by sun gods, sandstorms and scandalous secrets. Picture it, ancient Egypt, where love could elevate you to royalty, or leave you wrapped in linen far earlier than planned. And yes, in case you're wondering, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I don't bribe with gold or curses, just bedtime drama, with a sprinkle of historical spice. Oh, and drop your city and the time down in the comments. I always like knowing where you're watching from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air is already hot before sunrise. You can feel it in your bones as you walk along the dusty stone path that winds through the heart of Thebes. The sky is a hazy lavender, the Nile glinting quietly to the east as reed boats slice across its surface. Behind you, the early stirrings of the city echo, temple bells, bleating goats, and the faint rhythmic thud of grain being pounded in mortars. You pass a baker fanning his oven fire with a strip of palm leaf, and the smell of fresh flatbread mixed with wood smoke briefly cuts through the ever-present perfume of warm dust. Your tunic sticks to your back. It's always like this in late Paris, the growing season, when the floods have retreated and left behind dark, fertile silt. Crops are sprouting, and hope hangs in the air, sticky and sweet like fermenting dates. You wipe a hand across your brow and glance toward the towering walls of the Karnak temple complex, still casting long shadows over the avenue of sphinxes. Statues of gods glare down at you with blank, eternal judgment, as if they already know what's coming. You don't yet, but the city does. You're not nobility. You're not a slave either. You belong to that in-between world that does most of the real work. Scribes, potters, sellers of linens, keepers of records. Your father manages temple inventory. Scrolls, incense, grain jars counted and recounted with a precision only the gods demand. You grew up running errands between archives and altars, learning quickly how to slip unnoticed past officials who scowl when a child interrupts their wine-soaked lectures on cosmic balance. But now you're older, 17, maybe 18. Your job is modest, cataloguing items brought in by temple pilgrims and festival goers. You scribble down what they bring, what they hope the gods will take in trade, a sheaf of papyrus for good health, a carved ibis for a better harvest, a bolt of dyed linen in exchange for forgiveness, and that's where you see her. She moves like someone who's never needed to hurry. Her dark curls are tied back with a strip of red-dyed linen, expensive, and she carries a small alabaster jar nestled in her, palm like it's an offering. Her dress is simple but perfectly pleated and her sandals look barely worn. She has that practiced kind of beauty, the kind that makes you forget what you were supposed to be doing. Kia, daughter of a perfume-maker, though you don't know that yet. You just know she's about to hand you a jar and smile in a way that makes the heat rise tenfold. My father says the gods might favour a new blend of lotus and myrrh, she says casually, offering the jar. Her voice is low and honeyed. I think he just likes the attention. You manage to nod, scrawl the offering into your ledger, and say something that might have been a coherent response. She raises an eyebrow, thanks you with a wink, and disappears into the temple with the other pilgrims. You stare after her for a long time, until the jar's scent, warm, spicy, unplaceable, lingers on your fingers and seeps under your skin. That night, you dream of sandalwood and salt water. The next morning you're half waiting for her, and that's exactly when you meet him. His name is Horemheb, and he doesn't walk, he prowls. His skin is bronzed from years under the sun, and his linen is torn just slightly in that accidental on purpose way. He wears a soldier's badge, rank unclear, though his posture suggests he'd punch you for asking. He leans against a stall near the market square, biting into a pomegranate and watching the world like it's his to command. You pass him with barely a nod, but he calls out to you. You're the one Kia keeps talking about, aren't you? The sentence lands like a stone in your gut. You blink, stunned by the name coming out of this stranger's mouth. He grins, exposing a flash of seed-stained teeth. She thinks you're clever. Dangerous, he adds, walking over with the slow ease of someone who has broken bones for less. You mumble something about being neither. He laughs and claps your shoulder like you're already friends or already dead. You're not sure which. There's a tension there, subtle but unmistakable. Not a direct threat, not yet. but something like territorial growling beneath the charm. You feel it settle behind your ribs. The city feels it too. How quickly desire can become a challenge. That night, you walk alone along the embankment, watching the river gulp down stars. You try to push away the way Kia looked at you, the way Horemheb looked at her, the way both of them might already be playing a game you didn't know you'd joined. And somewhere nearby, tucked in the shade of a fig tree, an ibis cries out, a harsh, cracked warning. Historically, Thebes at this time would have been crowded, vibrant, a city full of competing interests, political, religious and personal. Love wasn't just an affair of the heart. It could be tangled in status, inheritance, even divine favour. One quirky fact. Ancient Egyptians believed the heart, not the brain, was the seat of thought and emotion, which is funny considering how many people lost their heads over love. Scholars still debate whether romantic jealousy was publicly condemned or quietly accepted in personal relationships. Our surviving letters and poems hint at both. You lie back on the flat roof of your father's home, listening to the murmured prayers drifting up from a neighbouring courtyard. Somewhere in the darkness, sandals whisper over stone, and the gods continue watching with expressionless patience. The market is louder today, tighter, as if the walls themselves are leaning in to hear more. The sun's barely cleared the tops of the temple pylons when you spot her again, Kia, standing beneath a blue linen canopy beside her father's stall. Rows of alabaster jars glint in the light, carefully arranged like temple offerings. You watch her from a few stalls away, pretending to study a basket of dried figs. She's laughing with someone, her head tilted back, curls bouncing at her shoulders. Her laughter cuts through the crowd like a breeze from the river, unexpected and necessary. You shouldn't look. You know that. But your feet drift anyway, past the copper seller's scowling son, past the jugglers and incense vendors. She sees you before you're ready and beckons with one finger, eyes half-lidded like a cat who knows it's about to cause trouble. You again, she says, arching a brow. Still scribbling away in the temple, or have they promoted you to chief god whisperer? You chuckle. Still scribbling. The gods seem oddly uninterested in promotion. She leans on her elbows, arms bare and golden in the morning light. Pity. I was hoping you could put in a good word for me. Maybe ask Hathor to make my next batch less unpredictable. She holds up a small jar. You open it, catch a swirl of something heady, jasmine, maybe, or something more citrusy. Then immediately cough when it hits the back of your throat like burning cinnamon. Kia laughs again. Still working out the proportions. My aunt says the recipe came in a dream. Maybe the gods meant it as a warning. She narrows her eyes at you playfully. Maybe you just don't have the nose for danger. You do. You absolutely do. You can already sense it curling around her like the scent she wears. Rich, addictive, and not entirely safe. A shadow passes between you and the sun. You glance up to see Horemheb, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. His eyes are on Kia, but his body angles toward you. There's no formal claim, no overt warning, just the stiff line of his jaw and the way his fingers twitch near the hilt of his dagger. Kia notices him too, but doesn't flinch. Instead, she straightens slowly and says, just loud enough to be heard. You two haven't been properly introduced, have you? You hesitate. Horemheb steps forward and offers a hand. Horemheb, he says, captain in training, soon to be assigned to the Nubian border. He glances at Kia, then back at you. And close friend to this troublemaker. You take his hand. It's calloused and warm, and he squeezes just a little harder than necessary. Your smile doesn't reach your eyes. Temple inventory clerk, you reply. Close friend to nobody, just passing by. Kia watches you both with a half smile, as if she's amused to see who will draw blood first. Horemheb lets go of your hand, but doesn't break eye contact. Maybe you should keep passing by, he says, tone soft but solid as limestone. You nod. Maybe. It's not a threat, not exactly, but it's also not advice. Kia makes a show of yawning. Well, this has been delightful. Shall we all continue pretending we're not sizing each other up like rival merchants at a camel auction? You glance at her, surprised by her directness. She shrugs. I have no interest in men who need to guard me like a golden calf. I'm not property, and I certainly don't need one of you trying to best the other just to prove whose beard grows thicker. Mine does, Horemheb says automatically. She ignores him. You smile. If you're not property, then what are you? She leans in, lips near your ear. A curse. Ask anyone. Then she turns and walks back into the crowd, trailing orange blossom behind her like a ghost. You and Horemheb stand there for a moment longer, breathing the dust she left behind. "Stay out of her way," he mutters. But it's already too late. Historically, personal relationships in ancient Egypt were complex and layered with expectations tied to status and gender. While women had more rights than in many ancient cultures, they could own property, divorce and run businesses, there were still deep-rooted expectations, especially around marriage and purity. Love poetry from the time often speaks in metaphors. Fish and nets, honey and bees. But the stakes were real. You mess with someone's love interest and suddenly you're on the wrong end of a sharp piece of bronze. The quirky fact here: ancient Egyptians believed in love spells, serious ones, amulets, charms, even elaborate rituals involving wax figures and recited verses were used to inspire or force someone's affection. Some of these spells were more about revenge than romance. And the debate? Scholars still argue whether love matches or arranged marriages were more common in the lower classes. While elite families definitely arrange marriages to secure political ties, people like you, commoners in big cities, may have had more freedom. But with freedom came the risk of choosing badly. Very badly. That night you can't sleep. You keep turning over the moment in your head. Her laugh, his stare, the tension between them like a drawn bowstring. The rooftops of Thebes stretch around you, warm under the moon, and below, music drifts from a nearby house. You hear the soft sound of a reed flute, laughter, footsteps. Somewhere out there, Kia is smiling. Somewhere out there, Horemheb is sharpening a blade. And here you are, caught in the middle of something you don't yet understand, but can already feel in your chest like the drumbeat of a coming storm. You're on your knees in front of a stack of reed baskets, trying to sort out which one contains temple incense and which one someone accidentally filled with dried dung. Again, when Horemheb walks past without looking at you. That would be fine, except he walks close. Too close. One of the baskets wobbles, another one tips. You scramble to stop the cascade, and by the time you've caught the last bundle with a grunt, he's gone. But he left something behind. Not physically, no. Nothing so obvious. Just a feeling. The kind that lingers after a jackal stares at you for too long on a quiet road. You're still thinking about it hours later as you pass the row of offering stalls near the sacred lake, watching geese bob along its still waters, while two old women argue over the price of salted fish. And then she's there again. Kia, because of course she is, sitting cross-legged in front of a musician plucking a harp. Her fingers are stained from mixing oils, and there's a smudge of something golden on her cheek. She looks happy, radiant, not like someone being watched by the city's most overprotective soldier, not like someone who's caught between two people standing at opposite ends of a rope pulled tight. She sees you before you can slip away. "You look haunted," she says, rising to her feet. "Did someone die, or did someone step on your sense of self-worth?" You raise an eyebrow. "A little from column A, a little from column B," she grins. "Come, you need something to balance your humours, and I need a second opinion on something my aunt swears will make me rich, or poison someone. Hard to say." You follow her past the painted columns deeper into the city, down winding alleys where laundry flutters like prayer flags and children dart around like sand sprites. She stops in front of a 2-story mud brick home with an open courtyard. Inside, the smell hits you immediately. Rosewater, burnt frankincense, and something else. Sharp, almost vinegary. Kia's aunt, Menhet, looks like someone who once argued with a god and won. She has skin like weathered papyrus and eyes that miss nothing. She greets you without warmth, gestures you toward a clay bench, and continues grinding something in a basalt mortar, with the kind of focus that suggests this mixture could kill a man if she feels like it. "I told her you wouldn't like it," Menhet says without looking up. "He doesn't have the face of someone who understands scent. He smells like old scrolls." You try not to look offended. Kia laughs. "Ignore her," she says. She thinks everyone under 30 is a lost cause. "I'm not wrong," Menhet mutters. Kia lifts the lid from a tiny stone jar and holds it under your nose. The scent hits you like a festival, procession. Flowers, spices, something earthy beneath it all. You blink. "It's good," you admit. "See?" Kia beams. "That's the 4th one. If I can get 10 consistent batches, I might actually be able to sell it beyond Thebes." Menhet snorts. "Assuming the priests don't declare it an aphrodisiac and ban it." "They only ban things they can't tax," Kia says breezily. Then she turns to you, a little more serious. I need a partner, not in business, in testing. Someone whose opinion I trust. Someone who doesn't smell like goat. You raise your hand. I'll do my best. She nods once, like she's made a decision. You realise, with a strange flutter in your stomach, that being chosen by her feels dangerous. Like standing too close to a fire and convincing yourself the heat is worth it. You stay longer than you meant to, Menhet mutters to herself in the corner, occasionally lighting bits of resin and tossing them into a bronze dish to observe how they smoke. Kia talks about her dream of someday selling her scents to nobles, maybe even the Queen's court. She wants a stall in Memphis, a boat of her own, a name people whisper when they smell something beautiful. You listen, and for a little while, forget about Horemheb, until you leave. The alley's empty when you step out, the sun now low in the sky. But on the doorframe of the neighbour's house, someone has carved a simple mark, a triangle, shallow and sharp. You wouldn't think anything of it if it weren't freshly etched, if it weren't the same symbol carved onto the sheaths of the palace guards. You say nothing, but your skin tightens as you walk home, faster now. Historically, in New Kingdom Egypt, soldiers often served dual roles, not only as protectors, but also as enforcers of informal codes within the community. While there were official courts and laws, personal disputes were sometimes handled through unofficial pressure, particularly when pride or women were involved. Horemheb, in fact, was a real historical figure who rose through the ranks from soldier to pharaoh, so the ambition in a man like him was no joke. The quirky detail here: ancient Egyptians believed strong scents could alter fate. Certain perfumes were thought to attract the gods, others to banish illness, and a few to stir deep emotions, even lust. In some rituals, priests used perfumes to enter a trance-like state and communicate with the divine. And the debate? There's ongoing scholarly discussion about how widespread these beliefs were outside temple circles. Was perfume truly magical for the common people, or just a luxury? Judging by how Kia treats her work, you'd say it's both. That night, you hear something outside your door. A soft scrape. You slide quietly from your mat, step onto the roof and peer down into the alley. No one's there, but on your doorstep someone has left a gift. A small bundle of dried lotus petals, wrapped in a strip of red. Linen? It's a sign. But of what you don't know yet. By the time the festival of Bastet rolls around, Thebes has transformed into something feral. What was once orderly and sun-scorched becomes a city drunk on its own perfume. Crowds surge through the streets like the Nile at flood, and everywhere people laugh louder, dance longer, and pretend, for one night, that their troubles have been sealed in jars and sunk to the bottom of the sacred lake. You're not entirely sure why you came. Maybe you just wanted to feel anonymous again, a face in the painted sea. Or maybe, deep down, you hoped the gods would mix things up, give you a sign, or at least a distraction. You didn't come with anyone, but the second you slip into the festival's current, you're never alone. Someone presses a cup of date wine into your hand. Someone else smears a dab of ochre on your cheek. Music spills from every doorway, flutes, drums, even sistrums jingling in time with a wild sway of hips and feet. It's nighttime, but the world glows. Torches line the streets, flickering shadows across murals of lion-headed Bastet tearing through evil spirits. Women dance barefoot on rooftop terraces, and laughter pours from balconies where noble sons lean over the railings, trying to spot pretty faces in the crowd. Cats prowl everywhere, sleek and confident, as if they know the night belongs to them. And then you see her. Kia wears a white linen dress, pleated tight to her waist, then flaring around her legs like a flame. Her hair is braided in thin rows down her back, tied with copper-threaded ribbons. On her wrist gleams a band of turquoise beads, and around her neck, a new amulet, a silver disc, shaped like an eye. It sparkles in the torchlight as she spins toward you, already smiling like she knew you'd find her here. You look like someone who's lost their place in the scroll, she says, raising an eyebrow. I didn't know I had a place, you reply. She steps closer, takes the cup from your hand, and sips without asking. You do, right here, for tonight. You want to say something clever, but the drums start pounding again, and Kia's fingers slip through yours. She leads you into the heart of the crowd, where dancers whirl and the scent of wine-soaked lotus clings to every breath. The music vibrates through your bones, ancient and wordless, and for a moment, it doesn't matter that Horemheb is somewhere nearby, watching. It doesn't matter that this might end badly. You dance. And the way she looks at you while she moves, it feels like a dare wrapped in silk. But nothing gold stays. Not in Thebes. Not during a festival dedicated to a goddess known for both protection and clawed vengeance. Because just as you're catching your breath, standing in the shadow of a pillar lit orange by firelight, Kia's eyes flicker past you and harden. You turn. There he is. Horemheb doesn't dance. He never would. But he walks straight through the crowd like it's parting for him, shoulders broad, jaw set, a polished dagger glinting at his hip. He wears formal linen tonight, crisp and white, with a deep blue sash that marks him as a soldier in favour. The crowd watches him out of the corner of its collective eye. Everyone knows you don't interrupt a festival, unless you mean to ruin something. He stops beside you, his gaze sliding over Kia before landing on you. You dropped something, he says. Then, with exaggerated slowness, he holds up a small red linen ribbon, the same kind Kia braided into her hair days ago. Odd where things turn up. She doesn't say anything, but she doesn't step back either, which only makes it worse. You say, "We're just enjoying the festival." Horemheb's smile is dry. "And the temple rats dance now. What a time we live in." Before you can reply, Kia does. "No one invited you, Horemheb." He tilts his head. "Didn't need an invitation. Just thought I'd see if anyone needed protecting. These festivals can get wild." His voice is silk wrapped around steel. Someone nearby starts to chant. A group of dancers lifts their arms to the moon, moving in time with the pounding drums. The crowd surges again, and Horemheb leans closer to you, voice low but sharp. "Don't confuse perfume with power," he says. "Scents fade, so do lies." And just like that, he turns and melts into the crowd. Kia exhales hard. He'll ruin everything if we let him. You stare after Horemheb, his silhouette vanishing into the torchlight. "He thinks he owns you." She laughs once, bitterly. "Everyone wants to own something in this city. A stall, a horse, a girl, doesn't matter. But Bastet doesn't let herself be owned." You nod. "And you?" "I'm not a goddess," she says, "but I bite." The music shifts to something slower, deeper. Kia draws you into a darker corner of the square, half shielded by a swaying curtain of reeds. The torchlight dances across her face, and for a second, the whole festival feels a world away. Her hands slide into yours again, slower this time. The tension between you crackles like a brazier fed too much oil. "I don't want a triangle," she murmurs. "Triangles are sharp. Someone always bleeds." You're close enough to smell the spice of her perfume now, the faint echo of cedarwood and ash. Your heartbeat thumps in time with the drums as your lips nearly brush hers. But the moment is broken by a cry in the distance. Somewhere near the temple gate, someone screams. The festival doesn't stop. The drums keep pounding, but your moment is gone. You step back. Kia frowns. "I should go," she says, "before he finds another way to punish me for not choosing him." "You already chose," you whisper. Her eyes linger on yours. "Not yet. Not for good." And just like that, she's gone again. Historically, festivals in ancient Egypt were a social and political stage as much as a religious one. Bastet's festivals were famously raucous. Boat processions, music, drinking, and unspoken flirtations. It was a rare space where hierarchies blurred, just a bit, and people stepped outside their roles, at least temporarily. A quirky fact: cats were considered sacred, especially during Bastet's festivals. Some women even tattooed small cats on their thighs or breasts as signs of devotion, or defiance. And the scholarly debate? Some argue that the public role of women during these festivals, dancing, playing music, was empowering, while others suggest it reinforced objectification. What's clear is that festivals were spaces where the rules wavered, and people took risks. You walk home through quiet streets, the music fading behind you. Somewhere, a cat yowls in the distance. Maybe it's a blessing. Maybe it's a warning. You're late to the temple the next morning. Not that anyone seems to care, except for Masonka, the old man who oversees scrolls and stares at you with the same suspicion he gives to cracked ink pots. His version of affection is yelling at you for smudging the inventory ledgers, which he insists are more sacred than the actual offerings they record. You accept his irritation like you accept the heat, ever present, mildly personal, but mostly unavoidable. But something's changed in the air today, and it's not just the scent of burnt resin. The priests walk brisker than usual, their voices hushed. A few glance at you sideways, as if you've grown a second head overnight. Two scribes you've known for years suddenly stop talking when you enter the records hall, their eyes darting between you and the papyrus they pretend to read. You feel it more strongly in the grainery. There, the whispers are thick. They hang in the air like flour dust, impossible to avoid. A girl's voice behind you murmurs, "That's him." Another, somewhere to your left. She left with him after the dancing. A third lower, half laughing. "Did you hear what he said to the soldier?" Brave or stupid, maybe both. You try to focus on the tally sheets, how many sacks of grain, how many jars of oil, but the numbers blur. Your ears won't stop catching your name. They're talking about you. You, the quiet clerk, the background character. Now dragged into a story you didn't realize everyone else was already watching. Word travels faster than the Nile floods, faster than temple runners or messenger pigeons. In Thebes, you could whisper something to your neighbour at sunrise and hear it repeated, backward and twice as scandalous, by sunset at the fish stall. So it's no surprise when Jet, a friend of a friend who sharpens blades and sells rumours, finds you near the temple courtyard that afternoon. He has a scar over one eyebrow and the greasy confidence of someone who survives by knowing what others want before they ask. "You're making waves," he says, handing you a fig like it's a peace offering. You stare at it, unsure if it's poisoned, enchanted, or just poorly timed. He chuckles. "Kia, Horemheb, the festival, that little alley moment. People saw things. People always see things," you mutter. He leans closer. "Yes, but they're telling them now, loudly, and some of the details are, let's say, embroidered," you sigh. "So what? Let them talk." Jet pops the fig into his mouth. "That's fine, until someone important hears it, or until the wrong priest decides you've embarrassed the temple by dancing too close to the fire." You rub your temples. "I didn't ask for this." "No one does," he says, licking his fingers. "But once the story starts, you either direct it, or it directs you." You think about that all the way home. That night your father finally speaks up. He's not a man of many words. He speaks in numbers, in measurements, in ledgers full of offerings. But tonight, as you sit at the low table, chewing on lentils and honeyed bread, he looks at you long and hard. "You've been noticed," he says simply. You freeze. The priests ask about you. Not directly. They ask what you've seen, who you spend time with. You swallow. "And what did you tell them?" He shrugs. "That you're quiet, careful, that you have your head in the clouds but your hands in the work." You stare at the table. He continues, voice softer now. "Thebes isn't kind to boys who get caught in other men's ambitions, especially not when a woman's in the centre." You nod slowly. "I know." "Do you?" he asks, and there's something like fear in his voice now. "Because I've seen ambition eat people alive. I've seen the priests bury truth under stone and call it divine will." There's a silence between you, heavy, older than either of you. "Be careful," he says at last. "The gods may watch, but it's people who punish." Historically, Thebes was a city full of social tension beneath its gleaming facade. Gossip wasn't idle, it was political. A whispered story could end a career, invite suspicion from the temple elite, or attract the wrong kind of divine attention. The grainery, as mundane as it seemed, was often a hive of chatter, where servants, officials, and labourers swapped tales more valuable than gold. A quirky fact. In some papyri, ancient Egyptian letters between workers included insults like, "Your mother is a dung beetle," and "May your nose be devoured by fleas," alongside sincere advice about love and rivalries. People were messy, even back then. As for scholarly debate, some historians believe that love triangles, especially among lower classes, were mostly ignored by authorities unless they disrupted temple operations or crossed class boundaries. Others argue that even minor romantic entanglements could be weaponized if they threatened to embarrass someone higher up. Either way, discretion was survival. You lie awake that night staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of your neighbour grinding barley through the thin mud brick wall. Somewhere down the alley a dog barks once sharply. The air feels charged again, like the space between lightning and thunder. You don't know who's spreading the rumours, or why. But you know they're spreading, and that makes you dangerous, to yourself and maybe to her. You remember Kia's voice. Triangles are sharp. Someone always bleeds. She wasn't wrong. You're up before the sun, walking the narrow alleys between the temple district and the palace walls, your feet moving faster than your thoughts. The city's still quiet. No merchants shouting prices. No priests waving incense in front of sweating pilgrims. Just the muffled shuffle of sandals over dust and the occasional clatter of an early cart. It should feel peaceful. It doesn't. You've been summoned. The message came at dawn, delivered by a boy barely older than 10, wearing palace livery and a solemn expression that didn't match his baby face. He handed you the strip of papyrus, nodded once, and darted off like someone avoiding fire. You've never been summoned to the palace before, not even near it, unless you count those long days waiting outside during feast inventory inspections. You're not important. You're not even adjacent to important. So when the letter, simple, ink still smudged, said, "You're requested at the garden court. Come quietly," you knew something had shifted. Again. 2 guards let you in through a side gate. They don't speak. One gestures with his spear for you to follow, and your legs start moving before your brain catches up. You pass walls painted with battles you've never fought, gods you've only seen from the cheap seats in temple ceremonies. The scent here is different. Less incense, more citrus and crushed flowers. Like power wears perfume just for fun. They lead you through an arched doorway into a lush courtyard unlike anything you've ever seen. Fig trees twist upward around sandstone columns. Vines dangle into ornamental pools where lotus blossoms drift lazily. The air is heavy with moisture and secrets. You hear bees, a trickle of water, and then a soft voice. "You're early. I like that." You turn. She sits on a low bench beneath a blooming acacia, one sandal kicked off, her ankle crossed over the other like someone who doesn't care how she's seen. Neferu, the queen's attendant. More than that, whispered to be the queen's shadow, the one who sees everything before the pharaoh does. Tall, sharp-eyed, and dressed in a gold-hemmed tunic that doesn't quite hide a dagger tucked against her hip. She doesn't motion for you to sit, but you do anyway. "I've heard a great deal about you," she says, picking a fig from a silver bowl. "Not from your mouth, of course. Yours seems wisely quiet, but others talk." You swallow. "Is that why I'm here?" She bites into the fig. Juice glistens. At the corner of her mouth. "Partially. That, and your name keeps appearing in the wrong places. Whispered in the wrong ears. You've attracted interest." You try to keep your voice steady. "I haven't done anything." She smiles without warmth. "That's the problem. If you had done something, we could punish it. As it stands, you're an undefined variable, and in Thebes, undefined things make powerful people twitchy." You glance around the garden. "So what happens now?" She sets the fig down delicately. "You tell me what I need to know." "I don't know what you need." "Oh, I think you do." Her eyes flash like polished obsidian. The soldier, the perfume-maker's daughter, the kiss behind the temple pillar, the conversations near the grainery, the warning Horemheb issued and the linen token you were too careless to hide. Your stomach knots. Neferu leans forward. "Let me tell you what I see. A girl who's smarter than she lets on. A soldier who sees her as his possession. And a temple scribe caught in something much larger than he understands. I never asked." She holds up a hand. "Let's not play the innocent. The gods don't buy it, and neither do I." You look down at your hands, dirt under your nails, ink stains from yesterday still on your palm. You've never felt smaller. "I didn't mean to cause anything." "No one ever does," she says. "But here we are." There's a long pause. Birds chirp somewhere overhead, obnoxiously cheerful. Then she shifts. "I didn't summon you to threaten you," you blink. "I summoned you because I see potential. I believe in identifying flexible people, those who haven't picked a side yet, who can still be shaped." You stare. Shaped for what? She stands slow and smooth, brushing a hand over her tunic. "For the future. The queen has eyes on the temple district. There are alignments forming, ones that don't concern you. Yet. But they will. And when they do, we need people on the ground who know how to listen." You try to speak. Nothing comes out. Neferu walks past you and pauses by the exit. Consider this a warning, and an invitation. She disappears through the archway, leaving behind only the scent of figs and crushed flowers. Historically, royal attendants like Neferu often wielded immense influence, especially in a court system where official ranks masked layers of informal power. Women in these positions could make or break careers with a glance or a whisper. Some even orchestrated marriages, temple appointments, and political alliances, all behind decorative veils. One quirky fact. Attendants often used gardens as informal meeting places, far from the stone ears of palace walls. These gardens weren't just pretty, they were strategically private. And the scholarly debate? Historians still argue about how much influence women like Neferu truly had. Some portray them as passive decorators of court life. Others see them as puppet masters behind the scenes, especially in reigns where pharaohs were young, distracted, or simply uninterested. You walk out of the palace in a daze, the heat slamming into you like a wall. The guards don't even look your way now. You're not a prisoner, but you're not quite free either. You're part of something now. You just don't know what. You don't go back to the temple right away. Instead, you wander the edge of the city, skirting the market square where the morning clamour is now in full roar. Merchants shout about fresh fish and hand-dyed linens, but their voices blur into a background hum you can't tune into. Every whisper feels like it's aimed at you. Every sideways glance feels like it sees more than it should. Even the cats seem more judgmental than usual. You cut through an alley behind a date seller's stall and emerge into the residential quarter, where the smells shift from spice and sweat to soap, goat dung and cooking lentils. You're not sure where you're going until you realise your feet have brought you to Kia's door. You shouldn't knock. You really, truly shouldn't. You knock. It opens faster than you expect. Not Kia. Her Aunt Manette fills the doorway, scowling like she's smelled something sour. She eyes you the way a hawk might regard a mouse with ambition. You've got sand on your face, she says, and something stupid in your eyes. You blink. Is Kia here? She's not seeing anyone. She told me to come back. She tells many people many things. The silence stretches between you like a drawn bow. Finally she grunts, steps back, and mutters, "Well, you're already cursed. Might as well come in." The house smells stronger today, like basil, burnt myrrh, and something oddly metallic. The air is hazy with smoke, and a pot bubbles gently on the hearth. Menhet moves like she's twice her size, sweeping across the room with purpose. You watch her sprinkle something into the pot from a small ivory box, and whatever it is sends up a cloud of deep purple steam. She notices you watching. Don't ask what's in it unless you want it in your mouth. You try not to cough. Are you making perfume or poison? Depends on who buys it. Before you can ask what that means, Kia appears from the curtain that separates the rooms. She looks tired, eyes rimmed with kohl that's slightly smudged, hair pulled into a messy braid that suggests she didn't sleep much. But her expression brightens the second she sees you. "I was hoping you'd be stupid enough to show up," you smile weakly. "I tried to stay consistent." She steps closer, touching your forearm lightly. "You look different. I was summoned to the palace." That gets her attention. Her hand drops. "What? Why?" "I don't know," you lie. "Something about people talking, the usual." Kia's lips tighten. "That's not nothing," you nod. "I met Neferu," Menhet snorts. "The Queen's shadow, that snake in silk." Kia shoots her a look. "She's powerful. She's dangerous," Menhet snaps. "So is your little soldier." The pot gurgles behind her, as if punctuating the statement. You sit on a low stool while Kia busies herself with a small bowl of crushed petals. She's mixing oils, measuring with the precision of someone who knows scent is its own kind of truth. As she works, you tell her what Neferu said. The garden, the warnings, the suggestion that you were being watched not for what you'd done, but what you might do. Kia listens in silence. When you finish, she sets the bowl down and rests her hands on her knees. She wants something from you. Obviously. "No," she says, shaking her head. "Not just obedience, she sees use, influence, maybe even control." You raise an eyebrow. "And what do you want from me?" The question hangs there, thick and fragile. Kia doesn't answer right away. Then she says softly, "Protection. Maybe partnership. Maybe just someone who doesn't look at me like a prize." You nod. "And Horemheb?" Her mouth twists. "Horemheb thinks the world owes him, that if he can't buy it or fight it, he should be able to claim it. And you? I want to be left alone, or followed, but only if I ask for it. She glances at you sideways. Do you understand the difference? You do? You really do? The room is too warm. The mixture in the pot lets off another pulse of purple steam. You realise your heartbeat is louder than it should be. Kia stands and walks to a tall wooden box. From inside, she removes a small cloth pouch and tosses it to you. It lands in your lap with a soft weight. What's this? Insurance, she says. A spell charm, one of Menhet's better ones. You open the pouch and find a scarab amulet, carved from deep green stone wrapped in a thin red thread. The underside is etched with tiny hieroglyphs. Protection, you ask? Or at least confusion, Kia says with a wink. Depends on who tries to use it against you. You slip it into your tunic pocket, feeling the chill of the stone against your skin. Menhet, still at her cauldron, mutters something under her breath. It might be a prayer, might be a curse. Kia walks you to the door. Outside, the heat has risen again. The air smells of dust and expectation. Whatever you decide, she says, decide soon. This story's moving with or without you. Historically, ancient Egyptians placed enormous value in amulets, especially scarabs. These weren't just jewellery, they were functional magic. Scarabs symbolised rebirth, transformation, and protection, often buried with the dead or worn during times of uncertainty. Some were engraved with personalised spells, created by temple artisans or freelance charm makers like Menhet. Quirky fact: spell charms were often sold at festivals or in back alleys, and many were, let's say, creatively interpreted. One spell was supposed to keep a lover faithful, by feeding them a tea made of honey beer and beetle parts. The debate? Some Egyptologists argue that most people didn't actually believe in the power of these charms, treating them more like social insurance, just-in-case items. Others believe they were deeply ingrained in everyday life, functioning as constant negotiations between humans and the divine. You clutch the amulet in your pocket as you step back into the streets of Thebes. Somewhere the scent of cedar smoke curls upward. Somewhere a shadow watches from a rooftop. And somewhere a soldier sharpens his blade. The Nile is quiet tonight, dark as polished obsidian and just as reflective. You drift on its surface in a papyrus boat barely wider than your shoulders, your fingers trailing in the cool black water. The sky above is wide open, scattered with stars that seem too close, too bright. Occasionally the boat rocks gently, bumping against invisible currents, but the world remains hushed. Somewhere nearby, frogs croak and insects buzz in their own midnight chorus, but it all feels distant, like the sound has been pulled away from you just a little. You hear her before you see her. Footsteps on the dock, the rustle of linen, a soft laugh, hers, and then Kia appears, carrying a small basket and moving like the night was made just for her to walk through. Her silhouette is backlit by the flickering torches of a nearby shrine, and for a second, she looks like a goddess stepping out of the underworld. You shift in the boat to steady it as she climbs in, bare feet brushing yours. You rode it yourself, she asks, settling opposite you with a smirk. You nod. I didn't think you'd come if I sent a servant. She raises an eyebrow. Bold of you to assume I'd come at all. And yet, here you are. Kia opens the basket, revealing figs, honey cakes, and 2 small clay flasks of wine. She hands you one without ceremony, then takes a bite of fig, chewing slowly. You know, she says, this used to be a sacred ritual, floating on the Nile after dusk. Couples would come here to be blessed by Hathor. You sip the wine. Are we a couple? She gives you a sly glance. We are 2 people in a boat. That's close enough for the gods. You both go quiet again, listening to the soft lap of water against the hull. The current carries you away from the shoreline, away from the torchlight, out into the velvet dark. The city becomes a low, glowing silhouette behind you, the temple columns rising like skeletal arms in the moonlight. Kia leans back, watching the stars. I used to think I'd never leave this city, she says. Now I'm not so sure. You tilt your head. You want to leave? Not exactly. I just don't want to be consumed by it. She doesn't have to explain what she means. Thebes devours people. You've seen it. The slow erosion of joy. The way eyes grow dull from too many secrets. Too many bargains. You understand now what Neferu meant about undefined people. People who haven't yet been claimed. You still haven't told me what happened between you and Horemheb, you say. Kia doesn't answer right away. Then she reaches into the bottom of the basket and pulls out a thin strip of linen, rolled and tied like a scroll. She passes it to you. It's a love letter. You recognise Horemheb's handwriting. Bold, slightly slanted. The words are clumsy and full of pride disguised as passion. He writes about how no other woman makes him feel like a king unseated. How her eyes are war banners and honey. It's desperate, awkward, and more than a little unhinged. He wrote that months ago, Kia says softly. Before the festival. Before you. What did you say? I didn't say anything. I burned the rest of them. You look at her. There were more. She nods. 7. One with a lock of his hair. One with a bit of blood on it. His, I assume. One sealed with beeswax and a crude drawing of... Well, let's just say it wasn't appropriate for temple reading. You nearly choke on your wine. He sounds possessive, she finishes for you, and dangerous, especially now. Why did you keep this one? She looks down at the scroll. Because it reminds me what I'm dealing with. What he wants isn't love, it's victory. You let the scroll fall back into the basket. Uneaten figs now quietly steaming in the cool night. And what do you want? You ask her. I want to survive. That hangs in the air longer than anything else. You stare at her in the moonlight, her profile calm but her eyes sharp. You can't tell if she's asking for your help or warning you to stay away. Maybe both. I think Neferu's watching us, you say. I know. She thinks you're a threat. Kia smiles. To who? The Queen? Or just her favourite soldier? You don't have an answer. There's a splash nearby, a fish maybe, or something else. You both freeze, instinctively leaning slightly toward each other. Did you hear that? You whisper. She nods. The moment stretches. Then, across the water, barely visible in the dark, a boat glides past in the opposite direction. No lantern, just shadow. Silent. Watching. You don't recognise the figure inside, but the shape is masculine. Broad shoulders, a glint of something metallic. Armour or dagger. You exhale slowly. We should head back. Kia nods, her face unreadable. We were never meant to float forever. Historically, moonlit boat rides on the Nile were deeply symbolic. The river wasn't just a trade route. It was a divine force, tied to the cycles of life and death. Couples often performed rituals on its waters, hoping to attract favour from Hathor, Isis, or other goddesses of love and protection. Quirky fact. Ancient Egyptian love poetry sometimes took the form of river metaphors. Lines like, "My heart sails to you without oar or rudder," appear in surviving texts. And yes, there are also poems involving crocodiles and poor navigation decisions. The scholarly debate here is fascinating. Some argue that romantic relationships among commoners were deeply emotional and private, based on personal affection. Others suggest they were transactional at heart, driven by security, property, or temple favour. Based on Kia's expression, you're guessing it's a little of both. You row in silence, the oars creaking softly. The shadow boat disappears into the reeds behind you. The current carries you forward, back toward the city, back toward the mess, the whispers, the choices that now seem unavoidable. In the bottom of the boat, the wine flasks rattle gently. The scroll lies untouched, and the stars keep watching. The next morning, you wake with the distinct feeling that someone's been in your room. Not a sound, not a footprint, just a shift in the air, the way it hangs heavier than it should. You sit up slowly, half expecting to see a figure in the shadows, but there's nothing. Only the usual clutter of your mat, a few scrolls beside the low shelf and a cracked bowl of leftover lentils. But as your feet touch the floor, you see it. An amulet. Not the one Kia gave you. That one is still tucked safely under your tunic, pressed close to your chest like a second heartbeat. No, this is different. A small green scarab polished to a dull shine, resting on your sleeping mat, neatly placed at the centre. It glints in the light that filters through the reed blinds, its legs curled tightly under its body, and the underside has something etched into it. You pick it up with cautious fingers. 3 glyphs: the eye, the flame, the crook. Your stomach sinks. You don't need to be a priest to understand the message. You're seen, you're warned, you're owned. You drop the scarab like it's hot. Outside, the street bustles with the early rush of bakers, water carriers, and temple workers. But inside your room, time feels suspended. Someone got in. Someone wanted you to find that amulet. And someone is making it clear that you're no longer just a name whispered in corners. You're now officially being handled. You tuck the scarab into a folded cloth and hide it beneath a loose brick under your mat. It doesn't feel safe, but it feels delayed. Like postponing an illness you don't want to name. You wash your face at the courtyard basin, but the water feels wrong on your skin. You dress quickly and head out, but the streets feel sharper today. No one says your name, but the pause in a conversation as you pass, the glance from the fish seller's son, it's all too familiar now. You're not invisible anymore, and that's not a gift. It's a noose. The temple feels colder than usual. Mesenka doesn't even grunt at you this morning. He just gestures vaguely at a pile of clay tokens that need cataloguing and shuffles away, muttering to himself. You settle into the task, trying to lose yourself in routine, scratching tallies, logging donation values. But the image of that scarab won't leave you. By midday, someone else notices. It's not Kia, it's not Horemheb, it's Teti. You barely know her, a junior priestess of Thoth. Young, sharp-eyed, and suspicious of everyone. She always keeps her head covered, her linen robes impeccably pressed, and her arms crossed like she's just waiting to report someone. Today, though, she's softer, curious. She slides up to your bench like a cat on a hot wall. "Interesting scarab you had this morning," she says without looking at you. Your jaw tenses. "I didn't show it to anyone." You didn't have to. Men like to leave calling cards, especially when they think someone needs a lesson. You turn your head slightly. "What do you know about it?" Teti shrugs. The eye means you're being watched. The flame means you've ignited something. The crook, well, that depends. It usually means control, but sometimes it's ownership. Depends on context. "I didn't ask for context." "No," she says, "but you needed it." You narrow your eyes. "Why help me?" She finally turns to look at you, and there's something surprisingly human in her expression. Something tired. "Because I've been where you are, and I got lucky. Maybe you will too." You study her. "Who sent you?" She gives you a dry smile. "I send myself." Before you can ask more, she glides off, melting into the temple's sandstone corridors like a shade returning to the underworld. You don't see her again that day. After work, you take the long route home, past the fish market, through the side alleys, past the staircase that leads up to the western wall, where the wind always cuts sharp. You walk until your legs ache and your thoughts dull to static. And then you spot him, Horemheb, standing at the far end of the street, watching. He doesn't move, doesn't shout, just folds his arms across his chest, feet planted, waiting. You keep walking, not toward him, not away. You pretend you don't see him, but the weight of his gaze follows you like a tether, and you know, deep down, he's the one who left the scarab. Later, in the quiet of your room, you retrieve it from its hiding place and hold it in your palm. You consider smashing it, grinding it beneath your heel, but you don't. Because this isn't just a threat, it's a question, and you haven't answered it yet. Historically, amulets in ancient Egypt weren't just decorative, they were deeply coded messages. Specific scarabs with carved symbols were used by military officers, secret messengers, and yes, romantic rivals. The Eye of Horus, the Ujat, was often used to signify divine surveillance. The flame could reference Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of retribution. The crook, as in the crook and flail, implied dominion or rule. Quirky fact. Scarabs were also used in love charms, left secretly in someone's belongings to either attract affection or curse romantic rivals. Some included microscopic inscriptions, readable only with a lens. Impressive, considering lenses hadn't officially been invented yet. As for scholarly debate, some historians believe such amulets were tied directly to ritual magic, while others argue they served more as psychological warfare. Small, potent symbols that triggered fear and compliance simply by showing up. Either way, you now carry a scarab from someone who means business. You tuck it into a cloth again, this time pressing it against your chest just beneath Kia's gift. 2 scarabs, 2 sides of the same game, one from her, one from him, and you, still the pawn. But maybe not for long. It's not exactly the most private place for a meeting. The western wall of the temple, in full daylight, isn't where you'd normally risk a conversation worth dying for. But it's quiet now, and the shadows stretch long across the stone. reaching toward the river like lazy snakes. The crowd that usually lingers here, beggars, pilgrims, the odd spice vendor with a cracked flute, has thinned. The wind is sharp, rolling in off the Nile, and it carries with it that sour, familiar scent of dust, fish guts, and baked clay. You wait beside a column carved with half-eroded hieroglyphs, arms crossed, eyes watching the path below. Then she appears. Kia slips around the corner like she was born from the sandstone, walking fast, braids swinging behind her. She doesn't slow until she's standing in front of you, face flushed from the climb. "Tell me you didn't do it," she says, breathless. You blink. "Do what?" She pulls a folded scrap of linen from her sleeve and thrusts it at you. You unfold it carefully, noting the smell of cinnamon oil still clinging to the fibres. The ink is fresh, the handwriting blocky and unfamiliar, but the message is simple. He was seen in the temple court after sunset, with her, behind the statue of Amun. Your chest tightens. This isn't true. "I know," Kia says, "but it's being passed around as if it is." You swallow. "They think that we were caught," she finishes, "in the temple, at night, alone." You say nothing. Kia looks past you toward the edge of the wall. This is exactly what he wants. Horemheb? Who else? This is how he works. He can't fight me directly, so he makes me someone who broke the rules. Someone the temple can't protect. You glance down at the scrap. You think he planted this rumour? I know he did, and it's working. You feel it too. The shift in the way people look at you. The sidelong glances, the growing space around your presence, like people are stepping back just enough to avoid the fallout. You've been branded, and you didn't even know it happened. "I was in the temple court," you say, slowly. "But not with you." "I know, but truth doesn't matter. Not here. Only what's repeated." She wraps her arms around herself, suddenly small. "Do you realize what happens to girls who get caught breaking purity laws in the temple court?" You do. Public shaming, beatings, sometimes exile, and if she's seen as deliberately seducing a man of the temple, worse. You step closer. "We'll fix this." Kia looks up at you, eyes glassy but fierce. "How?" "I don't know yet." She lets out a low laugh. "Then you'd better figure it out quickly, because today 3 people refused to buy from me. Menhet says she heard a woman call me a temple defiler. If that sticks, I can't stay." "You won't have to run," you say, though you're not sure you believe it. She studies your face. "We're not safe anymore, are we?" You don't answer. That night, you return to the temple, long after the last scribe has gone home. You sit near the statue of Amun, the same one mentioned in the note, and stare at the stone face towering above you. His expression hasn't changed in 500 years, still calm, still judging. You wonder how many people he's seen lie, kneel, confess, and beg beneath his gaze. You're about to leave when you hear footsteps. Not heavy, not Horemheb, not light, not Kia. Someone in between. You slip into the shadow of the statue, heart pounding. The figure emerges from the opposite corridor holding a torch. You can't see their face at first, just a pale linen robe, a hood drawn low. The torchlight flickers against the golden walls, casting distorted reflections onto the hieroglyphs. The figure stops in front of the statue, kneels and mutters something. A prayer, a confession. You can't make it out. Then they turn, and you see the face. Teti, the priestess from before. She doesn't see you, yet, but she moves with purpose. She opens a satchel, pulls out something small and places it at the statue's base. Another scarab. You stay perfectly still. After a moment she steps back, looks around and whispers, "He's not ready yet." Then she's gone. You wait 10 minutes before moving. When you approach the scarab, you recognize it instantly. Green, like the one you found in your room. You pick it up. On the underside, a new inscription. Truth is only dangerous when someone listens. Historically, temple spaces after dark were forbidden to most. Even low-ranking priests weren't allowed near certain statues without strict supervision. Being caught in a forbidden area, especially with someone of the opposite sex, was grounds for immediate expulsion, sometimes worse. But these rules, like all rules, were enforced selectively. Politics often decided who paid the price. A quirky fact. Some scarabs were not meant for protection or love, but for framing others, a kind of magical forgery. Leave the wrong amulet in someone's belongings and suddenly they're accused of stealing sacred objects or casting spells without sanction. As for scholarly debate, there's a big question over how much of temple purity law was about actual morality versus control. Some Egyptologists argue the rules were mostly tools to maintain power hierarchies, while others insist they reflected genuine religious fear. You slip the scarab into your tunic next to the others. That makes 3. You don't know what kind of game Teti is playing. You don't know who she meant by he. But you're sure of one thing now. You're being set up, and you're not the only one. The next morning she's gone. Kia doesn't appear at the stall. Her jars remain under their cloth canopy, arranged in perfect order, untouched. The small bowl of rose petals she usually sets out to catch the morning breeze is empty, dry. Menhet sits cross-legged behind the table, arms folded, her mouth a hard, silent line. You approach slowly, already knowing what she'll say, but needing to hear it anyway. She left, Menhet says without looking up, at dawn, with nothing but a bundle and a charm. You blink. Where? Menhet lifts her chin. I didn't ask. She didn't say. She just kissed my forehead and walked off like it was a market errand. A silence blooms between you, wide and cruel. She was scared, you say. She was smart, Menhet replies. She knows what happens to girls who stay after stories like that start crawling through the alleys. You feel suddenly unmoored, like the stone beneath your feet has turned to sand. You reach into your tunic and touch the charm she gave you, still cool even under layers of linen. You don't know why that makes it worse. She said she'd send a letter, Menhet adds, quieter now, but I wouldn't wait by the door. You nod slowly, the words catching in your throat. Menhet looks up at last, and for the first time you see something soft in her eyes. Not sympathy, she doesn't seem the type, but maybe recognition. Like she's seen this pattern play out before, and maybe she has, maybe dozens of times. She liked you, she says. Too much. That was the problem. You don't reply, there's nothing to say. Just a hole, widening. You turn and leave, your body moving without purpose. The market blurs. The voices fade. The heat presses against you, but you barely feel it. You end up in the archives, the same dusty corner you always return to, and pretend to work. Your hand moves across a ledger, recording offerings from 3 days ago. 1 clay goose, 1 silver ring, 6 baskets of barley. Your handwriting is steady, but your mind is not. You think of the boat ride, her laugh, her warning. We were never meant to float forever. You think of the scrolls Horemheb wrote. You think of Neferu and her smile like a knife. You think of the scarabs, the whispers, the lies you've become the centre of, and now she's gone. By mid-afternoon, word has spread. People say Kia was seen boarding a grain barge heading north. Others claim she ran to join a cult of Hathor out by the delta. One man swears he saw her meeting with a Syrian merchant, implying an elopement across the sea. You know better, or at least you hope you do. You find Jet near the pottery stalls, bargaining with a man over a chipped wine jug. He spots you and waves you off, but you wait. When he finally finishes, he tosses the jug aside and says, "So it's true?" She's gone. He nods, then leans in. And you? You look like someone who's just seen their heart sliced open and served on a reed plate. You glare at him. "I'm not in the mood for poetry," he shrugs. "Fine. Just tell me one thing. Did you get anything from her? Any notes, names, directions?" You pause. "Why would you care?" Jet scratches his chin. "Because people are asking, and not just the nosy temple grannies. Higher-ups. Someone's panicking about her vanishing act. They think she's taken something." "Like what?" He squints at you. "That's what you need to figure out." You walk away from him without another word. That night you find yourself on her rooftop. You shouldn't be here. It's quiet now. Too quiet. The perfume jars are gone. The mat's rolled up. Only a small black cat sits at the edge of the roof, blinking slowly at you as if to say, "You missed your chance." You sit beside it anyway, the city stretching out beneath you like a forgotten map. The stars are out again, the river reflecting their light in long, broken ribbons. You remember the feel of her beside you, the smell of jasmine in her hair, the sharpness of her laugh when she was teasing, and the weight behind her silences when she was scared. The wind picks up. You close your eyes, and then you feel it. A presence. You turn, fast, but there's no one there, at least no one visible. But something shifts in the air the way it does before a sandstorm, before lightning. Your heart beats faster. You reach into your tunic and touch the scarab again. Not Kia's. The other one. The one with the eye, the flame, the crook. You whisper, "I'm still here." No answer. But somehow you know someone heard. Historically, Thebes in the New Kingdom era was full of these quiet disappearances. When someone became too inconvenient, too visible, too loud, they didn't always get dragged away screaming. Sometimes they were simply erased, vanished without a trace, with only whispers left behind. Women like Kia, especially those seen as stepping above their place, were particularly vulnerable. A quirky fact. Some women fled cities like Thebes and ended up in religious enclaves far to the north, some even rising to leadership positions within goddess cults. There are records of women who started as merchants or perfumers and became powerful temple figures if they made it far enough away. The ongoing debate among scholars was vanishing an act of self-preservation or coercion. Were these women running for their lives or simply choosing freedom? The line is thin, and in most cases completely erased by the sands of time. You sleep on her roof that night, curled under a spare blanket she must have left behind. The cat curls beside you, warm and silent. You dream of boats drifting upriver with no destination, of jars filled with perfume that turns to ash, of scarabs that whisper in voices too ancient to understand. And when you wake, your fingers are still wrapped around the amulet, like your body knows what your mind refuses to admit. She's gone, and it's your move now. It begins with the pounding of fists on wood. You wake to the sharp crack of a sandal against your door just after dawn, the city still hushed in that brief moment before the dust truly starts to rise. You're on your feet before your eyes fully open, the memory of Kia's absence still raw, your heart already sprinting like a jackal caught mid-dream. Another knock, this one less a request and more a threat. You open the door to find two men in linen robes flanked by a third in a darker tunic. An initiate of Thoth, you realise, from the ink-stained cuffs and the way he clutches a scroll like it's a blade. They look you over with faces too blank to be casual, too still to be safe. "You're being summoned," the lead man says. "Come now." You don't ask why. You already know. They don't bind your hands, but they flank you close as they walk you down the narrow alleys toward the temple. You pass neighbours who glance out their doors, then glance away quickly, pretending they didn't see. The morning air is thick with humidity and judgment. By the time you reach the temple gates, your tunic sticks to your spine, and your mouth tastes of copper and panic. They lead you not into the main sanctuary, but to a side chamber. A cool, dark space carved with prayers to the ibis-headed god of wisdom. Shelves stacked with scrolls line the walls. A brazier smoulders in the corner, its smoke curling like serpents toward the ceiling. At the centre of the room sits a long table, and behind it, three figures. The High Reader, whose name you've never learned because no one speaks it above a whisper. Teti, now in full priestly regalia, her hair veiled and her eyes unreadable. And a third man, unfamiliar, older, thick-browed, with gold rings on each finger and a face like sun-baked stone. A magistrate, you guess. The kind whose job is to smell rot before it spreads. The High Reader speaks first. "You have been observed in inappropriate proximity to the sacred court of Amun after hours," he says, voice smooth and dry. "You have been associated with an offering woman whose conduct is currently under review, and you have been in receipt of unsanctioned divine amulets bearing restricted symbols." He pauses, letting that last phrase hang in the air like a scorpion waiting to drop. Teti opens a scroll and begins to read aloud. Not a charge, but a narrative, a reconstruction, a version of your life you barely recognise. You were seen entering the temple courtyard after dark. You were reportedly seen with Kia, twice. You were found in possession of scarabs tied to flame rituals. You received a visit from Neferu. Each fact is carefully, calmly delivered, and each feels like a stone added to a scale that's already tilting the wrong way. When they finish, the magistrate finally speaks. His voice is low and deliberate. "What do you say to these accounts?" You meet his gaze, your voice dry. "Many of them are true, but not in the way you're implying. Then explain, the High Reader says. Clearly. You take a breath. You explain everything, mostly. You tell them about Kia, about Horemheb's attention, about the rumours you didn't start and the scarabs you didn't ask for. You leave out the rooftop. You leave out the boat ride. You leave out the feeling of her hand in yours because that's not something they'd understand, and because it doesn't fit the version of events they want. When you finish, there's a long silence. Then Tetty stands. Her eyes fix on yours, but her voice speaks to the room. There is a pattern, she says. One that may not yet be fully formed, but it is forming. The scarabs, the disappearance of the girl, the note planted in the court, these are not coincidences. There is intention. And whether he is the architect or merely the thread that ties the web together, he is central. You stare at her. You know I didn't make her disappear. No, she says, but someone did, and you were close enough to feel the wind as they pulled her away. The magistrate leans back. He's not to be punished. Not yet. You exhale. Too soon. But he is to be watched. Restricted. 2 guards appear. One steps to your side. The other holds a wax-sealed scroll. The magistrate continues. You will not leave the city without permission. You will not contact the woman known as Kia if she returns. You will report to the Western Archive Hall every morning for re-education. You blink. Re-education? A cleansing of thought, the High Reader says. We will make sure you remember who you are and who you are not. They dismiss you without another word. You're escorted from the temple, but not back home. The guards walk you to the archives and post one outside. Inside, a young scribe hands you a reed stylus and a tablet. Write it, he says. Write what? He holds up a tablet of his own. On it are the words, I have acted unwisely. I repent. The gods are merciful. You stare at it. You want me to lie? No, he replies. We want you to learn. You sit. You write. Over and over until your hand cramps and the letters blur. By the 50th repetition, the words no longer mean anything. By the 100th, you're not sure you do either. Historically, the priests of Thoth were guardians of not just wisdom, but social order. They believed in aligning the individual with Ma'at, cosmic balance, truth, justice. Re-education was real. Repetitive writing, ritual confession, enforced silence. Not for criminals, always, but for those considered disruptive. A quirky fact. Some temple schools required cleansing periods for scribes who had impure dreams. These periods involved fasting, isolation, and writing mantras until deemed spiritually fit to return. The debate among scholars is whether these re-education rituals were effective, or purely performative, a way to make examples of people who drew too much attention. Regardless, they left marks. In some cases, literal ones. That night, you sit on your mat with your wrist wrapped in cloth, the skin rubbed raw from stylus work. You don't eat, you don't sleep. You wonder where Kia is, you wonder who Tetty really works for, and you wonder what it means that they're trying to silence you when you haven't said anything at all. You don't recognise the handwriting. That's the first thing. It's not yours, not Kia's, not even Horemheb's, though you've now seen enough of his desperate scrawl to identify it in your sleep. This is neater. Too neat. Someone trying hard to look casual, you think, but the precision gives it away. The clay tablet is left on your shelf at the archive, tucked just behind the stack of purification mantras you've been forced to copy for the 3rd day straight. At first, you think it's just another record, maybe an old donation receipt or a misplaced tally, but when you pick it up, you feel the weight of something. Off. The message is short, 8 lines, etched carefully in soft clay and left to dry without a seal. It begins with your name. To the temple scribe with dark eyes and reckless heart. You blink, reading it again. That's not a salutation. That's a key. Someone knows how to make a message feel like a blade slipped beneath the ribs. The note continues. Your scent still lingers on my hands. The night still clings to my skin like river mist. You promised me nothing, and yet I hold your name in my mouth like a prayer. Why did you leave so quickly? My heart, restless, my fingers still cold from where you last touched them. Meet me behind the house of the gardeners at moonrise, or I will assume I imagined you entirely. You read it again. And again. You feel your face flush, then freeze. You didn't write this. And whoever it's from, they signed it. Kia. But she didn't write it either. You know her handwriting, you've seen it on labels, on notes left in jars, scratched in the margins of old oil recipes. Her letters curve slightly to the right. This hand leans left, deliberate, stylized, someone pretending to be someone they're not. You turn the tablet over, no maker's mark, just a small etched triangle in the corner. Sharp edges, deeply carved. The same triangle carved on your neighbour's wall weeks ago. The same one associated with the palace guard. You sit very still. This is bait. You set the tablet down and pretend you never saw it. But inside your thoughts race. Who forged it? Who left it? Who wants you to show up at moonrise and find out too late that it was never about Kia? You spend the day watching, every whisper in the archive, every glance from the guards outside the temple. Teti passes you once in the corridor, and for the first time she doesn't speak, just raises an eyebrow, a flick of her fingers. A question you're not sure how to answer. You don't go behind the house of the gardeners at moonrise. Instead, you arrive at sunset. The house is a half-abandoned structure just west of the sacred lake. Once used by floral priests who arranged garlands for the gods, it's now mostly vines and broken columns. The air here is thick with the scent of damp papyrus and rotting lotus stems. You step lightly, listening, watching. You're not alone. There's someone already there, crouched low near one of the fallen walls. You stay hidden, peeking through a crack in the old stone. It's Jet. Of course it's Jet. He's holding the clay tablet, studying it. Then he reaches into his satchel and pulls out another. This one already carved. You can't see the message, but you see the same triangular mark. Then another figure steps into the clearing. Horemheb. You crouch lower, breath caught in your throat. They speak in low tones. Too quiet to hear everything, but you catch fragments. Doesn't suspect. Said she was gone. You made it too obvious. Neferu's watching. Need something stronger next time. Your blood turns cold. You back away slowly, careful not to disturb the debris at your feet. When you reach the edge of the ruined structure, you turn and bolt. Quietly, efficiently, keeping to the shadows, your breath sharp in your chest. They're working together. Jet, Horemheb, maybe even more. Kia's disappearance might not have been hers to choose after all. You make it back to your room without being followed. You shut the door, lock it with the bone pin, and sit down on the mat. The clay tablet still burning in your thoughts like a fever. Historically, forged love letters were a real tool in ancient politics and personal vendettas. A well-placed tablet could frame someone, discredit a rival, or trap a lover in scandal. The Egyptians valued writing so deeply that even fake messages carried power. If it looked official, it might as well be divine. Quirky fact, some love letters included exaggerated metaphors that would put modern soap operas to shame. Your limbs are honey, your eyes two moons was considered subtle. I'm drunk on your neck was slightly more intense. And the debate? Scholars still argue how many of these letters were sincere and how many were manipulations. Were they heart-poured poetry, or calculated moves in a much larger game? Like most things in Thebes, it probably depended on who held the stylus. You take out Kia's scarab again, you trace the edges of its tiny glyphs, you think about her real words, the way she spoke, the way her fingers moved when she mixed scents. This letter isn't her, not even close, but someone wants you to believe it is. You lie back on the mat, staring at the ceiling, listening for footsteps that don't come. Not yet. You don't ask to be summoned again. You simply are. Just after dawn, while you're still brushing sleep from your eyes and debating whether you'll be forced to copy another 100 lines of temple dogma, a young servant appears. She's tiny, bird-boned, with a quiet way of knocking that somehow still manages to wake half the courtyard. You open the door, half expecting another scarab, another warning. She wants you, the girl says simply. No explanation. No name. But you know who she means. You bathe. You dress carefully. Plain linen. Neutral tones. Nothing that suggests arrogance or submission. You leave the scarabs behind. Both of them. And Kia's charm too, though it takes a small war between your gut and your brain to do it. The palace gates part without hesitation. The guards barely glance at you this time, as if you're no longer a stranger but a frequent guest, a known variable. Inside, the air is thick with the perfume of neroli blossoms and crushed coriander. A scribe bows as you pass, another servant offers a cloth to wipe your face. You ignore them. You're led back to the garden court, and there she is, Neferu. perched on a cushioned bench beneath the shadow of a fig tree sipping from a narrow-necked glass, gold bangles wrapped around her wrists like snakes in mid-slither. Her hair is styled differently today, braided into coils pinned with lapis, and she wears the kind of linen that costs a year's wages just to look at. "Sit," she says, gesturing without looking up. "You sit." "You've been busy," she says lightly, finally turning to you. Fake love letters, missing girls, unsanctioned meetings behind abandoned buildings. "I didn't write the letter." "Of course you didn't. Jet did. But it has your scent now, doesn't it?" You feel yourself flinch. Neferu smirks. That's the trouble with scent. It clings. People remember it long after the source is gone. "Why am I here?" She sets the glass down and leans forward slightly. "Because I want to make you an offer, and because despite all this noise, I believe you're still smart enough to recognize opportunity." You say nothing, she continues. "The palace is shifting. You don't see it yet because your eyes are focused on rooftops and riverbanks. But things are changing. There are priests who believe the queen has grown too sympathetic to the Temple of Hathor. There are generals who whisper about the priesthood controlling too much grain. There are rumors of new taxes, new gods." You frown. "What? Does that have to do with me?" Neferu smiles, slow and cat-like. "Everything. Because in the middle of this mess you've become interesting. You're connected to the temple, to the streets, and to a girl who, until very recently, had the ear of people she had no business charming." Your throat tightens. "You mean Kia?" "She was gathering scents, yes, but also stories. Do you think I didn't know she was slipping oil jars into the noble quarters, selling to wives of priests, listening, recording, passing what she heard?" You stare at her. "She didn't say." "Of course she didn't. That's how she stayed alive." Neferu leans back. "For a time." "What do you mean, for a time?" Her face darkens just slightly. "She's vanished, off the map, no contact. And now people are whispering that she took something with her. A list, names, secrets, things I would like to find before someone else does." You sit very still. "And you think I know where she is?" "I think if you don't, you soon will." You feel the weight of every step you've taken these past weeks. The letter, the scarabs, the whispers, the cold edge of Horemheb's stare. It was never just about a triangle. It was a web, a net, and you've been tangled in it from the beginning. "What's the offer?" you ask. Neferu's smile returns. Simple. Find her. Bring me what she took, or tell me who has it. Do that, and I ensure your protection. No more scribal punishments, no more surveillance. I could even put you forward for temple promotion. Real power, real safety. And if I don't, she shrugs, you'll disappear, like she did. Or worse, you'll stay, and people will forget your name long before the jackals reach your bones. You look down at your hands, the ink stains on your fingers, the calluses on your palm from too much carving. You think of Kia's laugh, the way she walked ahead of you in the moonlight like she already knew the path. You think of her perfume bottles, the ones labelled with more than scent, little marks, hidden beneath the wax that maybe weren't fragrance codes after all. You look up. I need time. Neferu nods. Of course you do. That's why I'm giving you 3 days. You blink. That's not time. That's a death sentence with a polite delay. She lifts her glass again. Then don't waste it. Historically, palace attendants like Neferu operated with terrifying subtlety. They wielded the pharaoh's favour like a blade, and often ran intelligence networks that stretched from temple courtyards to market stalls. Some even orchestrated quiet purges, removing rivals through staged scandals or whispered orders. Officially, they were nothing more than advisors. Unofficially, kings and queens rarely moved without them. A quirky fact. Several surviving letters from high-ranking women to temple scribes contain coded language that strongly suggests information, gathering. Phrases like, "send more of the sweet-smelling oil," or "the recipe must be adjusted for the festival," appear repeatedly. Historians now suspect these were thinly veiled requests for intelligence, and the scholarly debate. There's argument over how formal these intelligence webs were. Were women like Neferu part of an organised spy ring, or just opportunists with sharp instincts? Either way, when they wanted something, people made themselves useful, or vanished. You leave the garden with your heart thudding. 3 days, that's all she gave you. Find Kia, find the list, or find yourself buried beneath both. The hardest part isn't the danger. It's the not knowing. The way the city carries on like nothing has happened, like no one is missing, like no one has been threatened with disappearance. People still shout in the marketplace. Children still splash in the shallow parts of the river. Fishermen still complain about the price of nets. But for you, it's all wrong. The light hits differently. The food tastes flat. Even the city's endless hum feels like it's tuned to a key that grates against your teeth. You walk the long avenue between the temple and the grain quarter, trying to look like someone with nowhere to be, trying to remember faces, stalls, doors half cracked open. You linger at corners, listening for fragments. You check her old routes, Kia's routes, places she walked, people she knew. You whisper her name at wells and baker stalls and alleys behind perfume shops. But the only replies you get are shrugs and looks too carefully neutral. And then you find the boy. Not a name you know, just a boy, maybe 12, watching you from behind a cart stacked with clay jars. You almost miss him. But then he scratches his arm, twice, crosses to the opposite side of the street and disappears into an alley. You follow. He waits just long enough for you to catch up before he turns again, moving faster. It's not a chase, it's a test. You pass through a knot of hanging laundry, past a broken fountain filled with oily water. At last, he stops beside a stack of abandoned bricks. He reaches into a hollow space in the wall and pulls something out, wrapped in cloth, tied with a frayed string. "She said you might come," he says. You take the bundle carefully. When? Before the boats, before she left. Your heart catches. She planned this, at least part of it. You nod. "Thank you," the boy shrugs. "I get paid either way." He vanishes. You return to your room and shut the door with more care than usual. You untie the bundle, breath shallow. Inside is a folded papyrus scroll, a strip of Kia's linen sash, red, frayed at one end, and a tiny vial of something opaque and dark. You uncork it cautiously. The scent is sweet, musky, layered with something bitter. Not a perfume, a message. The scroll is short. "I had to go, not because of you, because of them. I found something, hidden in the temple, records, something tied to the Queen's household. Neferu isn't just watching, she's cleaning, erasing, and she's starting with me. But I have a copy, half of it. The rest is with Menhet. Ask her about the garden that never grew. Trust no one else." You stare at the words, heart hammering. This isn't just about temple gossip, this is about power, about someone pulling strings behind every smile and offering bowl. Kia found something, something worth running for. You memorize the note, then burn it. Menhet doesn't open the door when you knock. She opens it when you speak. She said to ask you about the garden that never grew. That gets her attention. She steps aside. Inside. Now. The place smells like crushed mint and fire. Menhet moves briskly, dragging out a small chest from beneath a bench. She opens it to reveal a scroll tied with a bronze clasp shaped like a scarab. "You sure you want this?" "No," you say, "but I think I need it." She hands it to you. "Don't open it here. Don't open it anywhere near anyone who smells like sandalwood and secrets." You glance up. That's everyone. Then go where the gods don't bother listening. You leave her house and slip through the streets like a shadow. You avoid the temple, the market, even your own home. At last, you duck into the ruins near the old scribe school. Abandoned, roof caved in, walls covered in faded teachings no one cares to scrub clean. You settle onto a broken bench, unwrap the scroll and read. It's a list, names, ranks, dates, all tied to grain shipments and perfume imports. But not just any imports. Rare ingredients, coded under fake entries. The same names repeat. Over and over. Some you recognize, some you don't. Neferu's is circled, twice. You realize what this is. A ledger of bribes. A secret economy that flows not in coins but in rare oils. Temple waivers and favours. Horemheb's name is here. Jets too. Several priests. Even 2 mid-ranking nobles from Memphis. This is the garden that never grew. Because it wasn't a garden at all. It was a cover, and Kia found it. No wonder Neferu wants her gone. You sit back against the wall, scroll in your lap, heart thudding. You know you can't keep this. You can't even hold it long. But you can memorize it. The patterns, the names, enough to call it back if it disappears, and then you'll have to choose what to do with it. Historically, economic records were meticulously kept in ancient Egypt, and bribes, while technically illegal, were often hidden within trade ledgers. Some used euphemisms, gift, and garden maintenance as ritual expenses. The scribes who noticed these patterns were either silenced or promoted, sometimes both. Quirky fact: perfume ingredients like blue lotus oil and rare resins were worth more per ounce than gold. Temple officials with access to such goods could wield them like weapons, bribing priests, influencing marriages, even altering legal decisions. And the scholarly debate? Did these ledgers survive because someone hid them, or because someone wanted them found? Some historians suggest whistleblowers existed even then, scribes or servants who left breadcrumbs, hoping someone else would be brave enough to follow. You finish reading and rewrap the scroll, you're running out of time. 3 days Neferu gave you, you've spent one. Now you're holding the seed of something poisonous, and you still don't know which side you'll plant it on. You meet him near the tombs, just as the sun slips behind the western cliffs and casts everything in the necropolis in that sickly gold glow that makes the dead seem restless. It's the kind of light that stretches shadows into monstrous shapes and makes every column and broken statue look like it's watching. You pick the spot for a reason. No one goes to the old tombs after dark unless they have a death wish or something to bury. Horemheb arrives late. Of course he does. He doesn't walk so much as he arrives, solid and upright and utterly confident that no matter what happens here tonight, he will walk away first. His cloak flutters slightly in the rising wind, and his fingers rest too easily near the blade at his hip. "I heard you've been asking questions," he says, skipping any pretense of greeting. You nod. "And I've been getting answers." "Dangerous habit," he says, "for someone who's not even a full priest, or a soldier, or anything really." "I'm just a scribe," you say. "Funny how often that gets me into trouble." Horemheb walks a slow circle around you, boots crunching on gravel and bits of old bone. The necropolis is silent tonight. No jackals, no wind, not even a bird. Just you and him, and the stale breath of centuries clinging to the tomb walls. "What do you want?" he asks at last. You hold up a scrap of linen, one of Kia's old labels. He flinches just slightly. Enough. "I want to know what happened to her." He stops pacing. "I don't know," he says, a little too quickly. "She left because of you." "Did she?" His voice sharpens. "Or did she leave because of you?" You glare at him. "She left because she was hunted. She left because she got involved in things she didn't understand," he snaps. "She played at power like it was perfume and gossip, but she forgot. Those people don't forgive, they don't forget, they don't care about your good intentions." You take a step forward. "Did you turn her in?" He tilts his head. "No." You believe him. Mostly. "But you didn't stop it either," you say. He shrugs. "What do you think I am? A hero? A poet? I'm a soldier. I do what I'm told." "No," you say. "You do what makes you feel powerful." He takes another step closer. "And what do you do? Chase girls you don't understand and read scrolls you're not supposed to touch. You think you're some champion. Of truth? You're just a footnote. No one will remember your name. You pull something from your tunic. Not a scroll, not a blade. Just a single name written on a strip of papyrus. His. Written beside a rare oil shipment. A bribe entry. One of many." "I will," you say. "I'll remember." He lunges. You expect it, but it still knocks the wind out of you. His shoulder hits your chest and you both crash to the ground, dust exploding around you. You scramble, elbowing hard into his ribs, but he's stronger, faster. He pins you with one knee, hands fumbling at your belt, not for a weapon, for the scroll. You let him take the papyrus, because it's a copy. You're not stupid. But as he leans over you, breathing hard, dust streaked across his jaw, you see something behind his eyes. Fear. "This is bigger than us," he says. "You don't know what they'll do." "I don't care anymore." "You should." He stands, breathing hard, scroll crushed in one fist. "This?" He waves it at you. "This is nothing. They'll burn it. They'll burn you." You push yourself to your feet, chest still aching. "You're already burning," you say. He glares at you like he's seeing you for the first time. Then, with a bitter laugh, he turns and disappears into the shadows of the tombs. You stay there a long time after he's gone. The wind returns, a soft, low whistle through broken statues and forgotten names. The stars begin to show above, one by one. You wrap your arms around yourself and sit beside an unfinished tomb, its doorway still rough, as if the craftsman walked away mid-chisel and never returned. You know how that feels. Historically, the necropolis near Thebes was not just a city of the dead. It was a political tool. Burials were status symbols. The closer to royal tombs, the more prestigious the afterlife placement. But during political turmoil, it became a meeting ground. Quiet, isolated, watched only by gods and ghosts. Quirky fact. Some tombs held secret chambers, not for treasure, but for stashing politically sensitive documents. Priests who felt threatened would hide ledgers in burial shafts, hoping one day a sympathetic soul would retrieve them. Some were never found, others still might be waiting. As for the debate, some scholars believe physical fights between rival factions were rare, resolved more often with poison or exile. Others argue that when bribes failed, violence stepped in fast. The truth is probably both. Quiet murder when possible, loud warnings when necessary. You walk home through the desert edge, the wind at your back and your tunic stiff with dust. You don't feel triumphant. You feel carved. Horemheb won't stop. Nefru definitely won't. But you no longer care about winning. Only finishing what Kia started. Because somewhere out there she's watching too. And you'd rather die than let her think you forgot. It's waiting for you when you get home. There's no knock. No warning. Just a message drawn in silence and blood-red pigment across your doorframe. The smell hits you first. Metallic, sour, with the unmistakable tang of crushed ochre. You freeze, mid-step, heart thudding so hard it feels like the whole street must hear it. The mark is crude, scrawled with fingers or a stick, not a brush. But it's deliberate. A single red circle, broken at the top, a line through the middle. It's not a glyph. Not exactly. It's a symbol. A warning used in the old days, before writing was common, before the gods were sorted into neat family trees. It means one thing, no matter how you read it. Marked, cursed, watched. You scan the alley. No one's there, not visibly, but you feel them. Someone passed by your door after you returned from the necropolis, after your encounter with Horemheb, and decided it was time to send a stronger message. The scarabs were subtle. This isn't. You don't touch it. You don't wipe it off. You leave it there as evidence, even if no one will acknowledge it. Inside, the room feels colder than it should. You check everything, under your mat, behind the storage jars, even the reed screen by the basin. Nothing's missing, nothing's moved, but the silence presses on your chest like a stone slab. You stay up most of the night, scroll open on your lap, eyes tracing the list again and again. You could burn it now, destroy every copy, pretend you never knew. Walk into the temple tomorrow and ask for another 100 lines of penance like a good, obedient nobody. Instead, you copy the list again, by memory this time. Not onto papyrus, but onto a strip of linen, the kind used for burial wrappings. You ink it small, tight, weaving the names between faint lines of decorative symbols. It looks like a blessing spell to anyone glancing casually, but it's not. It's a receipt of betrayal. You fold it, tuck it into the hem of your tunic. The next morning, the mark is still there. But someone's added a second stroke beneath it. You smile. It's almost flattering now. Instead of heading to the temple, you take a detour to the workshop district, where the potter's kilns belch black smoke, and the air always smells like wet clay and old fire. You find a man named Nefru, who owes you a favour from that one time you covered for him, when his delivery was late for a temple ritual. He doesn't ask what's in the sealed jar you hand him. He just nods, slides it into a stack of outgoing cargo, and promises it'll reach the house of a distant apothecary in the Delta, someone who knows how to keep scrolls dry and mouths shut. You're hedging your bets now. If something happens to you, the truth will still exist. Not in your hands, but somewhere else. Somewhere that might matter. That afternoon, you return to the temple and act like nothing's changed. You nod to the guards. You smile at the scribe who's been watching you too openly. You even sit in the archive and scratch a few meaningless lines into clay tablets for show. But your mind is elsewhere. You're not listening to the whispers anymore. You're counting footsteps. You're watching shadows. You're waiting for the next move. It comes later than expected, just after sundown, when the air grows soft and the city stretches, sighs, and prepares for sleep. This time, it's not a mark. It's a voice. Titi finds you in the corridor outside the Hall of Offerings, alone, half reading a ceremonial calendar. She doesn't speak at first, just leans against the wall, arms crossed, watching you. "You're still alive," she says finally. "That surprises me." You glance at her. I've been harder to kill than expected. She nods slowly. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you. That gets a smile out of her, a small one, almost real. She steps closer. I know about the list. You stiffen. Do you? Not everything. But I know what Neferu's looking for, what Horemheb's trying to bury. I saw enough when I was still copying palace scrolls last season. Why tell me this now? She lowers her voice. Because something's shifting. The Queen's been asking questions. Someone leaked part of the ledger to her inner circle. Neferu's scrambling. You narrow your eyes. Was it you? No, she says. But I know who it was, and they're going to die unless you move faster. You consider that. You want to help me? I want to survive, she replies. Helping you is the only path I see that doesn't end in a linen shroud. You nod slowly. Then we need to talk about where to go next. She glances down the hallway. Not here. You step closer. Then where? Teti meets your gaze. The old chamber under the grainery. The one sealed after the rat infestation. You know it? I know it. Meet me there, midnight. She disappears into the gloom without another word. Historically, sealed chambers beneath granaries weren't uncommon in ancient Egypt. Many storage structures had sub-levels used during flood season, or to store offerings away from rats and theft. Some were forgotten entirely. Later, they became excellent hiding places, both for the living and for what they didn't want the living to find. Quirky fact. Egyptians were obsessed with written curses. A common one? May your name be forgotten from the mouths of men. It was considered a fate worse than death. To be erased from memory was to be truly lost. That's why writing names down, especially in secret, was both dangerous and powerful. The scholarly debate? Some researchers argue that the culture's obsession with secrecy and symbols was largely psychological, a way to control fear in a chaotic world. Others believe the layers of meaning had practical purposes: code, survival, legacy. You're beginning to understand it might have been both. At midnight, you slip through the market and into the shadow of the grainery. The streets are empty now. Even the cat's gone quiet. You find the stone hatch beneath the rear archway, half covered in broken baskets and dust. You lift it. You descend into the dark. You don't look back. The air in the chamber beneath the grainery is thick, thicker than above ground, dense with the scent of mould, ancient grain, and the ghost of rats long dead. You descend carefully, 1 foot at a time, your torch held high, casting flickering shadows that stretch and leap along the sandstone walls. The stairs are narrow, cut deep into the rock, and halfway down you are already sweating through your tunic. The silence is profound, broken only by the sound of your breath and the faint, distant drip of water echoing through stone. When you reach the bottom, you find yourself in a low, vaulted space. The ceiling curves like the underside of a boat, carved with faint, almost erased inscriptions. Tally marks, trade records, maybe the names of offerings never claimed. It's not a place meant for people. It's a place for storage and secrets. Teti's already there. She's kneeling beside a broken amphora, the lid pried open, revealing a scroll jar inside. Ceramic, sealed with wax, the kind used for temple documents too sensitive for ordinary archives. She doesn't look up when you arrive, just mutters, "Close the hatch behind you." You do, sealing the chamber in total darkness save for your shared torchlight. You crouch beside her. "I had to bribe the night guard with 2 beads and a promise to bless his goats," she says dryly. "Let's not waste it." You glance into the jar. Is that it? One of them. One of many. She gestures to a pile of similar jars beside her. Most are supply records, but this one, she taps the jar, has a royal seal. Not Neferu's, the Queen's. You frown. What's it doing down here? Teti smiles. Exactly the right question. She breaks the wax seal with a small copper knife. You hold your torch closer as she slides the scroll free. The parchment is brittle with age, but surprisingly intact. The first line bears the official insignia of Queen T's administrative chamber, rare. Reserved for personal correspondence or top-level court summaries. You read it together. What unfolds is not just damning, it's explosive. It's a list of transactions, rare oils, herbs, pigments, and ceremonial cloth, tracked meticulously. But what makes it dangerous is the footnote at the bottom, written in a different hand, less formal, more rushed. Secure all documentation regarding the temple imports under Neferu's seal. Do not link directly to the Queen's name. Destroy duplicates. Offer gifts to the Amun priesthood to ensure silence. Rotate handlers every quarter moon. You look up slowly. This links her. Teti nods. It links them all. The Queen, Neferu, half the temple elite. She's hiding the Queen's involvement, you whisper. This whole time, Neferu wasn't just racing for herself. She was protecting her mistress. Titi's face is pale in the dim light, and framing people like Kia to make it stick. You stagger back a step, pressing a hand to your chest. This changes everything. This isn't just about a missing girl or some forged perfume records. This is about the highest level of power in Thebes, shaping the flow of goods, of influence, of divine approval. This is politics wrapped in silk and oil and whispers behind pillars. And Kia stumbled into it because she sold fragrance to the wrong noble wife. What do we do with this, you ask? Teti hesitates. We go to the Hall of Two Truths. You blink. You're serious? She nods. The temple court. Public. Witnessed. The High Reader presides. The Queen's agents don't dare silence someone in full view of Ma'at. You shake your head. That trial court exists for petty crimes and ceremonial disputes. Exactly, she says. No one will expect something real to be laid before it. You stare at the scroll, your throat dry. We'll be torn apart. She leans in, her voice low and urgent. Only if we fail. The Hall of Two Truths is one of the oldest rituals in Thebes. A performance more than a judgment, where disputes are weighed not in terms of guilt, but cosmic balance. The heart must match the feather of Ma'at, truth, harmony. People recite their defense in front of priests, scribes, and sometimes even noble guests. It's a spectacle, a drama. But there's power in drama, especially when no one expects real fire on the stage. You pace the chamber while Teti wraps the scroll again, sealing it in a fresh layer of cloth and slipping it into her satchel. We'll need witnesses, you say. We'll get them, quietly. We'll need to stall Neferu. Teti grins grimly. You leave that to me. She stands, brushing dust from her robes. You follow her up the narrow stairs, sealing the hatch once more behind you. Outside, the air is crisp, the stars brilliant against the black sky. We do this tomorrow night, she says. At the final session before the new moon. The chamber will be full. Everyone will be there. You nod. It'll be our only shot. Teti disappears into the dark. You return to your room to find the red symbol on your door has been wiped away. In its place is a white smear. Chalk, maybe. Drawn in the shape of an open eye. A new symbol. A new watcher. Historically, the Hall of Two Truths existed both in life and in the mythology of death. It was the place where the soul was judged. But temples in Thebes maintained actual court rituals using this name, where public grievances could be aired and resolved. While most were symbolic, some grew dangerously real, especially when politics seeped into the ritual. A quirky fact. Petitioners were expected to recite their truth while barefoot, a symbolic gesture of vulnerability and humility. Some people carved prayers into the soles of their sandals in case they collapsed mid-testimony. The scholarly debate is whether these performances were ever more than theatre, but fragments of papyri suggest at least a few turned into genuine reckonings. A person with enough charisma, or enough evidence, could turn a trial into a revolution. You lie awake that night, listening to the wind whistle through the alley. Somewhere, someone is preparing to silence you. Somewhere else, Kia is waiting. For what? You don't know. But tomorrow, everything changes. You don't plan to die. But if you do, it will be loudly. You've never worn white linen quite like this before. Not crisp temple robes or ceremonial dress, but the plain wrap of someone stepping into judgment. It's scratchy against your skin, smells faintly of myrrh and dust, and every thread reminds you of how vulnerable you are. Your sandals are off. Your feet are bare. The soles of your feet press against the cold stone tiles of the Hall of Two Truths, each step echoing louder than the last as you walk past rows of murmuring onlookers. No one touches you, but you can feel the weight of every stair like a heat behind your neck. The hall is built like a miniature cosmos. Pillars shaped like papyrus stalks reach up to the heavens, their tops disappearing into vaulted gloom. Torches flicker in sconces carved with the 42 divine judges of the underworld, each with their animal head and cold eyes painted to watch you forever. At the far end stands the High Reader, dressed in gold-threaded linen, holding a palm staff. His face is impassive. To his right is a scribe with a clay tablet. To his left, the feather of Maat, an actual ostrich feather, pure white, resting in a dish of oil. You take your place at the centre of the hall, alone. Then Teti steps out of the shadows. She's barefoot too, though her expression is calmer. Fiercer, even. She carries a small satchel and bows once to the High Reader, who nods without blinking. The High Reader's voice booms across the hall. Speak your grievance before the gods and this court. Speak only what your heart can bear. Teti steps forward and begins. She doesn't rush. She doesn't stutter. She speaks like someone who's held silence too long and has finally found the perfect moment to let it shatter. She tells them about the scrolls beneath the grainery, about the ledger sealed under royal authority, about the ingredients, the shipments, the names. She names Horemheb, she names Jet, and she names Neferu. Gasps ripple through the crowd like wind through dry grass. You can hear robes shifting, hands tightening around staffs. Someone near the back coughs too loudly. Another whispers a name you don't catch. The High Reader raises a hand and the hall quiets. Do you have proof? He asks. Teti nods. She reaches into her satchel and pulls out the scroll, the one you recovered, wrapped in burial linen. She walks barefoot across the stone floor and places it on the altar beneath the feather. The scribe retrieves it, unrolls it, scans the contents, mouth tightening. The High Reader speaks again. You have made accusations against figures of high rank. These are not words to cast lightly. They are not light, Teti replies. They are heavier than any stone. And what do you seek? Justice? Vengeance? Truth, she says, in front of the gods. That's when the doors open, and Neferu walks in. She doesn't slink. She strides. Her hair is perfect. Her robes glisten in the torchlight like silver river water. Her expression is unreadable, somewhere between amused and furious. She walks past the assembled crowd, her sandals clicking once before she steps out of them and onto the stone. My name has been invoked, she says, and I invoke my right to speak. The High Reader nods once. Neferu turns to the crowd. This is not a grievance. This is slander disguised in piety. Two minor temple functionaries attempting to elevate themselves by inventing corruption. There is no proof I acted against the Queen's will. There is no law broken by organising temple trade. Bribes are not trade, Teti says. Gifts, Neferu counters. Blessings exchanged between houses of worship. It's tradition. It's custom. It's always been. You step forward now. You've waited too long. I have more proof. Your voice cracks across the silence. You reach into your tunic and pull free the second copy of the list, the one you inked onto linen hidden between protective glyphs. You walk toward the altar, bare feet whispering over stone. This is the second ledger, hidden in Kia's recipes, written in code, but I translated it. The scribe takes it, studies it. His eyes widen. The High Reader lifts the feather from its dish. You both stand before the gods. You claim truth, but only one truth may remain. A murmur of approval. Some nod. Some shake their heads. Neferu steps closer to the altar. I have served the palace for over 20 years. I have preserved the dignity of the Queen. I have overseen every grain shipment, every perfume jar, every guest offering. If I am guilty, so is the entire court. And they will answer too, the High Reader says calmly. But tonight, we weigh your heart. A priest of Maat steps forward. He's old, hunched, but his hands are steady as he unwraps the scale. 2 bronze plates suspended by woven thread. On one side, the scribe places your scroll. On the other, the white feather. Symbolism, of course, not literal, but no one breathes. Another priest steps forward with a jar of Nile water. He pours it slowly over the feather's plate, still balanced. The High Reader speaks again. If your heart is lighter than the feather, the gods will favour you. If it is heavier, they will know your deception. He turns to you. Speak now. You take a deep breath. You speak of Kia, of her disappearance, of how she found the records, tried to warn you, how she fled not from guilt but from fear. You speak of the scarabs, the forged letter, the warnings written in blood on your door. You speak of Horemheb in the tombs, and Neferu's offers. You finish with, I do not ask for punishment. I ask for acknowledgement. Then you step back. Neferu's expression doesn't change, but her fingers tremble. The scribe reads aloud both scrolls. The crowd listens, and the high reader lifts his hand. This court will reconvene at moonrise tomorrow. Until then, the feather will rest upon the scroll. If the gods wish to intervene, they may. If not, we will act. Neferu bows stiffly. Leaves. Teti exhales beside you, sweat glistening at her temples. That's it, you whisper. That's the start, she replies. Historically, ritual courts like the Hall of Two Truths blurred the line between performance and real law. The feather test was symbolic, yes, but sometimes decisions truly did hinge on interpretation of omens overnight. If the feather moved or fell, or the scroll was found unwrapped, it was considered divine judgment. Quirky fact. Some priests would tamper with the scale, gently bending the frame or loosening threads to sway the results. It was risky but not uncommon. The debate among scholars: were these trials tools of justice, or just a way to maintain temple control? Did they deliver truth, or silence it in a more elegant costume? You leave the hall barefoot, scrollless, exposed. But for the first time in weeks, you feel something strange. Hope. You're nearly to the shrine of Hatshepsut when you hear her name again. Not whispered, not muttered, but spoken plainly. Not as a warning, not as memory, but like someone real, present. Kia. You stop. It's an old man saying it. He's hunched over a basket of onions, talking to a younger woman who's got a clay jug balanced on her hip. You know better than to interrupt outright, so you listen, half hidden behind a column painted with faded depictions of the sunbark and offerings of figs. I saw her last market day, the man says, voice rough and slow, down near the river stalls, wearing temple servant colours, but I'd know that smile anywhere. The woman shakes her head. She vanished weeks ago. No, he insists. She's hiding, not gone. They made her disappear, but she never left. Your mouth goes dry. The river stalls, temple servant colours. You run. The district by the Nile is alive with motion. Carts creaking under baskets of dates and fish. Children darting under tables. Merchants shouting over one another like priests at festival time. You push through it all, ignoring the curses and elbows, scanning every face, every doorway, and then you see her. At first, you're not sure. There's linen wrapped around her head, her posture more stooped than you remember, but the way she moves, the way her hand lingers too long over a jar of coriander, the way she laughs, softly when a child tugs on her robe, it's her. She turns, and you both freeze. Kia's face is thinner, her eyes rimmed with fatigue, but they widen the moment she sees you. She doesn't smile, she doesn't run. She simply steps back, slipping behind the spice vendor like she's fading into smoke. You chase her anyway. Through the crowd, past stacked baskets of turmeric and dried hibiscus, until she ducks into a stone archway behind a fish stall. You follow her into a narrow corridor where the smell of river mud and incense lingers in the air. And finally she stops. She turns slowly, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You weren't supposed to find me. You're not good at hiding, you say, breathless. Her mouth twitches into the bearer smile. Then maybe I wanted to be found. You step closer, afraid she'll disappear again. They said you were gone. They told everyone. Menet said you left at dawn, on a boat heading north. She had to say that, Kia replies. I told her not to tell anyone the truth, not even you. You frown. Why? Because if you knew, you'd try to protect me. Or worse, drag me back into this mess. You shake your head. You are the mess, Kia. You lit the fuse. She doesn't deny it. She leans against the cool stone and closes her eyes. I thought if I ran, the fire would burn out. But I was wrong. It followed me. You step closer still. Teti and I took the scroll to the Hall of Two Truths. We named names. The trial's set for tonight. Kia's eyes snap open. You did what? What you couldn't. You have no idea how deep this goes. Yes, I do, you say. I saw the records. I read the letters. I know what Neferu's covering up. I know about the Queen's seal. She exhales slowly, shoulders sagging. Then you know we're not just fighting for your little temple reputation anymore. We're up against a system built from lies and oil and gold and gods that don't blink. You reach out and take her hand. She doesn't pull away. You don't have to hide anymore. You can come back, speak at the trial, tell them everything. She looks down. And die for it. They won't kill you in public. Don't be so sure. Kia, you say, we're past the point of staying safe. But if we let this rot grow, then every girl like you, every girl with ideas and ambition and too much perfume, gets crushed before she has a chance to live. She smiles finally. That sounds like something I'd say. It's something you did say, you reply. You just didn't wait around to hear yourself. She takes your hand fully now, gripping it like it's the only solid thing in the world. I still have the second scroll, she says, the one with the Queen's personal instructions. It's hidden in the temple laundry quarters. No one checks there. You stare at her. Why didn't you destroy it? Because someone had to remember, in case I didn't come back. You nod. We'll go together. She hesitates. I'll meet you, tonight, after sunset. Bring no one. I'll bring Teti, Kia considers. Only her. You part again, her vanishing back into the crowd like a myth, like she never really returned. But she's back, and tonight, so is the truth. Historically, the Nile-side marketplaces in Thebes were chaotic centres of power in disguise. Servants passed gossip between stalls, priests bought luxury goods behind veils. Disguises were common, especially for women avoiding attention. Head coverings and low posture could erase a face better than any mask. Quirky fact. Temple laundries were often staffed entirely by women, considered invisible to male priests. As a result, they became sanctuaries for secrets, storage places, meeting points, even safe havens during political purges. A scroll hidden there could easily go undetected for years. And the debate? Scholars argue over how many women in ancient Egypt acted as informants, spies, or whistleblowers. Traditional records minimize them, but recent findings suggest many left clues in coded recipes, trade records, and personal letters, often disguised as mundane household chatter. You spend the rest of the day preparing. You eat a small meal, hands shaking. You sharpen a reed stylus, not for writing, but in case it comes to that. You wrap your final copy of the scroll in a prayer strip and tuck it beneath your belt. You bathe in silence. You whisper a name to the wind. Kia. Tonight the city watches, and the gods may finally have to listen. They call it a banquet, but it doesn't feel like a celebration. It feels like a trap. The Hall of Two Truths has been draped in silk for the occasion. Red and gold fabric stretching like fire across every pillar, each cloth hiding the cold stone beneath. Lanterns swing from hooks, casting flickering shadows that ripple across the walls and give the gods painted there the appearance of shifting, restless movement. Servants bustle through the space, their faces carefully blank as they carry trays of pomegranate wine, fig cakes, and roasted duck drizzled in honey. It's too much, too sweet, too rich. Every flavour feels like it's trying to keep you distracted. This is what power tastes like in Thebes, heavy and honeyed, just enough to make you forget what's crawling underneath. You're seated near the back of the hall, close enough to see the main floor but far enough that no one will pretend you matter. Teti is a few rows away, sitting with a group of minor temple officials, her head bowed as if studying her own hands. You catch her glance, and she nods once, just enough to say, "We're still on course." Everyone is wearing masks. That's the theme tonight. A formal feast to honour Ma'at and the balance of truth. And of course, nothing says truth like a room full of people hiding their faces behind painted falcons, cats, ibises, and even the occasional grinning crocodile. You wear yours too, a simple one, made of linen and stiffened with clay paste, painted with a faded scarab in blue and green. It covers your eyes and nose but leaves your mouth free. You breathe through your teeth. You hate the smell of it. At the front of the room, the High Reader sits without a mask, his face as still as ever, hands resting on the ceremonial palm staff. Beside him, the white feather lies across a bronze tray, untouched since the previous night's hearing. You wonder how long it's been since anyone dared to move it. Neferu enters late. She makes no apology, no excuse. She doesn't need one. Her mask is stunning. Carved wood, painted gold and black, shaped like the face of a lioness. Sekhmet, the goddess of wrath, of plagues, of fire. How fitting. She glides to her place at the centre table and lifts her goblet before anyone else. People toast before she even speaks. The theatre is already thick. You scan the room again. No Kia. You try not to panic, but the minutes drag, thick as temple mud. You sip your wine and taste nothing but old clay and anticipation. The food before you remains untouched. Then, just as the third course is being cleared, grilled fish stuffed with herbs and dates, you see her. Not at the main entrance, but slipping in through the servants' passage behind the musicians. She doesn't wear a mask. Her hair is wrapped tightly, her tunic plain, but her face is unmistakable. Even from a distance, even in this mad room of lies and sweetness, she glows. Her eyes catch the torchlight and return it with something sharper than flame. You stand too quickly. The motion catches Neferu's eye. She follows your gaze and freezes. Kia steps onto the main floor, silent as a priestess, and the room tilts. Not literally, but that's how it feels. You can hear the air being sucked inward, the sudden cessation of laughter, of harp strings, of anything that dares to pretend this is just a banquet. She stops in the centre and speaks. "I was never gone," she says. The High Reader raises his palm staff slightly. "You were marked absent from the court." "I wasn't absent," she replies. "I was erased." Gasps, yes. Some whispers. Some eyes narrowing behind masks. She turns slowly. "And I have come to remind you what you tried to forget." She pulls something from her belt. A tightly rolled scroll sealed with wax and bound in string dyed with crushed lotus petals. It's small, elegant, deadly. She walks it to the altar, unseals it. The scribe takes it, eyes it. His expression doesn't change, but the grip on his stylus tightens. "It matches the previous documents," he says quietly. The High Reader nods. "And you, Kia? Do you stand by this account?" "I lived it," she says. "Every oil jar, every name, every whispered confession in the halls behind the palace walls. I never meant to become part of this. But when I saw how deep it ran, I couldn't pretend not to know. And when they came for me, I left. Not to run, but to protect the truth until it had a place to stand." Her voice is clear, strong, unshaken. You've never been more certain that she's the centre of all this. Not just the spark, but the storm. Neferu rises slowly. Her mask is still on. Her voice cuts through the silence like a dagger. "You have no standing in this court," she says. "You're a merchant, a servant's daughter. You're not initiated. You're not clean." The High Reader speaks over her. "The truth does not recognize titles." Kia bows her head. "Exactly." Neferu takes a step forward. "Then I call for the heart waiting." Gasps again. "Even from the priests. It's not symbolic anymore. Someone will be judged tonight. For real." The High Reader raises both hands. "So be it. The gods will decide." The ritual is set quickly. Kia steps forward, barefoot, hands open. A priest brings out the balance. You find yourself moving too, stepping into the light. You don't remember standing or walking, but suddenly you're there beside her, shoulder to shoulder. "I stand with her," you say. The High Reader looks at you both. "This is not symbolic now," he says. "If your truths are heavier than the feather, the punishment is not theatrical. It is exile, or worse." You don't blink. Neither does Kia. The scroll is placed on one plate, the feather on the other. Silence. The crowd holds its breath. Then, the plates balance, perfectly, and stay that way. The priests murmur. One faints, another sobs. Neferu is still. Then, slowly, she removes her mask. Her face is pale, but her mouth is smiling, just barely. "This proves nothing," she says. The High Reader stands. "It proves enough. The gods have spoken." Neferu turns to go, but guards appear at the exit, and for the first time, her smile falters. Historically, the ritual of the heart waiting was reserved for the dead, but ceremonial reenactments were sometimes staged in public trials. A balance that stayed level was seen as divine approval. If it tilted, it was interpreted as guilt, even if the scale had been rigged. Quirky fact. Ancient Egyptian court banquets often featured games and performances that mimicked religious judgment. Sometimes they became real. A scribe who lost a bet in one such trial was actually stripped of rank the next day. The debate among historians, whether such rituals were truly believed to have divine input, or whether they were brilliant political theatre, tools to sway crowds and cement decisions no one dared dispute. Tonight, you feel it. Something shifted, not just in the room, but in the city. You and Kia step down from the altar, hands still joined. The gods have weighed you, and you're not done yet. They don't arrest Neferu that night, of course not, that would be too simple, too honest. Instead, she's escorted away like a noble guest whose drink was just a little too bitter, flanked by guards who don't touch her, who move just a step behind as if they're unsure whether she's a prisoner or a goddess. And maybe they are. In Thebes, it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. One moment you're whispering into a queen's ear, and the next, you're the whisper everyone wants to forget. But she's gone. For now. And that alone feels like something cracked open. Something broken just enough to let air rush in. You and Kia leave the Hall of Two Truths in silence, moving through the dark streets like shadows that don't want to be chased. Teti finds you just before you reach the temple quarter, her cloak pulled tight against the cool night air, her breath visible in the moonlight. "I saw what happened," she says, eyes darting between you both. "I wasn't sure you'd survive it." "Neither were we," Kia replies softly. You take a moment just to breathe. The city is quieter now, as if holding itself in suspense, as if it knows it's been caught in a moment that will become legend whether it wants to or not. "We're not safe yet," Teti adds. Even if she's lost favour, Neferu has roots that go deep. She has allies. Half the grain officials owe her favours. Some of the priests too. So what do, you ask? Kia looks at the sky, where the stars are sharp and impossibly bright. We prepare for what happens next. That means staying hidden for the night, avoiding the temple apartments and even your old room. You hole up in a laundress's quarters behind the western sanctuary, one of Teti's contacts, and sleep curled on a mat between two baskets of damp linen, the scent of lotus soap soaking your dreams. The next morning everything is different. No one says it outright, but you feel it in the way people walk and how they greet you. Not with suspicion, not with curiosity, but with wariness. As if your very presence might summon more change, more trouble, more truth than they're ready to deal with. Word spreads fast in Thebes. By midday the temple scribes all know. So do the market vendors. So does the guy who sells dried figs with the bee problem. Someone even scrawled your name on a plaster wall outside the scribe school, next to a drawing of a balanced scale. It's not fame, it's danger, and you feel it in every glance that lingers a little too long. You check the usual places, the archive, the incense court, the alcove behind the statue of Tar where Teti once found an entire scroll hidden inside a hollow brick. You're not looking for messages now, you're watching for silence, and there's a lot of it. Neferu is absent. Officially she's in retreat. Rumours say she's been summoned to the Queen's private sanctuary, that she's either preparing for exile or planning her next move. No one seems to know which, but you do know one thing. She's not gone. Not yet. The High Reader sends word the next afternoon. You're summoned, but not alone this time. Kia and Teti both come with you. No guards, no escort. Just 3 people walking into the lion's mouth like they're hoping it already ate. The Reader meets you in the outer sanctum, a cool chamber lined with star charts and carved prayers to Maat. He doesn't rise, just gestures for you to sit. "You've disrupted the balance," he says flatly. You nod. "Good." That gets the faintest hint of a smile from him. "She's not finished," Teti says. "She still has people on the inside." "We know," the Reader replies, "and we're watching them." "Then what happens next?" Kia asks. "That depends on you," he says. "The Queen's household will not publicly acknowledge the events in the hall, but they will act, quietly. Neferu's influence is being trimmed. For now." "And us?" you ask. "You're not heroes," he says. "You're messengers, and messengers are only useful if they remain alive." You don't argue. You're given roles, new ones. You're not a punishment scribe anymore. You're made a translator, someone who reads between records, traces meaning in ledgers and symbols, answers questions no one else wants to ask. Teti is promoted to full archivist. She doesn't smile at the news, but you see her shoulders straighten. And Kia? She's offered something strange, a commission, to manage temple imports, oils, perfumes, incense. "They want to bury it," she mutters afterward, pacing the quiet garden behind the granary. "They want me to become the very thing they accuse me of being." "No," you say. "They want you to make it clean." She looks at you, half sceptical. "And what if I can't?" "Then at least you'll know who to watch." The city begins to shift in small ways. The scarabs disappear. The temple guards seem less tense. New scribes arrive from other districts, quiet, hungry-eyed, and careful. The whispers about Kia stop, not because people forget, but because they're not sure what side she's on anymore. Power does that. It confuses loyalty. Still, you never feel fully safe. Not when you wake in the morning to find a single lotus petal left on your windowsill. Not when a merchant offers you a gift for what you did, wrapped in too much silk. Not when you find a second red circle drawn beneath the lintel of the incense storehouse, so faint you could pretend it's a smudge, but you don't. Historically, power in Thebes was never truly won or lost. It shifted like the Nile, flooding, receding, eroding one shore while feeding another. The temple might speak of truth, but behind its walls truth was often a matter of survival, a quirky fact. Some officials wrote confessions they never sent, hiding them in their tombs, not for others, but for the gods, to explain themselves after death, to say, I did what I had to, but I remembered what was right, and the debate. Scholars argue whether changes in court favour came from courage or convenience. Were reformers truly bold, or just savvy survivors? Either way, they knew that once the wheel turned, you had to run just to stay on top of it. You find yourself writing again, but differently now. Not lines of punishment, not mantras, but stories. Notes about what happened, about the trial, the scrolls, the scarabs. Kia. You don't sign your name, not yet. You keep them in a jar, sealed with wax buried beneath your floor mat, just in case. Because the truth won't protect you, but it might outlive you. The rains come late this year, and with them, a rare kind of stillness. The river runs lower than usual, the boats creak against their moorings, and Thebes exhales like a city holding something in its chest far too long. Everyone's waiting, though for what exactly no one dares say aloud. Floods? A new tax edict? A fresh scandal from the Queen's court? You know better. They're waiting to see if the old ghost will rise again, and if they'll know whose name to whisper when they do. Your name isn't whispered much anymore. Not out loud, anyway. Not like it was after the trial, when scribes would lower their voices at the archive table, when vendors would glance sideways before handing you a fig. You still see it written in odd places, scratched lightly on a beam above the grainery, or etched into a wall near the incense court, usually alongside the sign of balance. But the fever has broken. It should feel like peace. It doesn't. Titi says it best when she catches you half asleep at your writing desk, chin on your arms, eyes blurry from translating a temple gift ledger filled with 6 different handwriting styles and at least 3 layers of deceit. This city doesn't forgive, she mutters. It just forgets better than it should. You grunt in reply, but she's right. It's been over a month since the trial. Kia's settled into her new role as temple liaison for imported scent materials, which is both exactly what she always wanted, and also a cage made of petals and polite invitations. She moves with more purpose now. She dresses like a woman who could afford to disappear people, not just vanish herself. But in the quiet moments, when it's just the two of you in the courtyard behind the temple kitchens, sharing a bowl of pomegranate seeds, she leans against your shoulder like nothing's changed. And maybe, between those heartbeats, it hasn't. But you still flinch when you find a jar left on your doorstep with no note. You still walk with your hand hovering near the stylus knife you never use but always carry. You still dream of Neferu's mask, gold and black and always smiling, because no one has seen her since the trial. The Queen's household issued a statement. Neferu had taken a vow of silence and entered private retreat, dedicating herself to spiritual reflection. No one believes it, but no one's interested in pushing harder. If she's exiled, she's dangerous. If she's still, inside the palace, she's more so. Some say she fled north toward Memphis. Others say she died. Others still say she never left, that she walks the underground halls of the Queen's chambers at night, masked, invisible, waiting. You start noticing signs again. Not the red circles, not the open eye marks, subtler things. An unfamiliar face watching you too long from the bread stall. A temple cat that follows you from the library to the scribe quarters 3 days in a row. A strand of Kia's perfume, one only she wears, appearing on someone else's neck at festival rehearsal. You mention it to Teti one afternoon as you both sort donation list for the solstice ceremony. She nods. It's not over. It never is it? You think the ledger was the end, she says. It was just the first layer. You run a finger down a list of names, half of them smeared with ink. What if we go deeper, you ask. She looks at you. You mean dig? I mean pull the next thread. Teti leans back, her eyes scanning the dusty beams of the archive. You want to start a war? No, you say. I want to know who else was in that garden that never grew. Because the truth is, even after everything, the scrolls, the trial, the shifting temple rolls, you still don't know how deep the garden's roots go. Kia gave you names. You saw Horemheb's part, Neferu's control, but someone had to approve the purchases. Someone had to create the codes. Someone had to make sure the scribes recorded the bribes just well enough to be hidden, but not so well they couldn't be found. Someone bigger. And the Queen's name, though hinted at, scribbled once in haste, hasn't surfaced again. That kind of silence feels intentional. You and Teti begin again, quietly, carefully. You cross-reference shipment records from before Kia ever started selling oils. You pull scribal rosters and note which ones stopped showing up just before the trial. You find donations from nobles who suddenly retired to estates upriver. You find recipes in the House of Perfumes that use impossible ingredients. Ambergris from seas Thebes never touched. Resin from trees that don't grow in this climate. The deeper you dig, the more you find rot. And the more you understand why people stop asking questions. Because once you see the outline of the beast, you can't pretend it's just shadows anymore. One night, Kia finds you staring at a half-finished scroll, your brow furrowed. "What are you doing?" she asks gently. You sigh. "Writing it all down." "Again?" "Better." She leans over your shoulder, scans a few lines, then presses a kiss to your temple. "Be careful," she whispers. "The gods might start listening." You glance at her, smiling faintly. "I hope they do." Historically, Thebes during the late New Kingdom was a tangled mess of official religion, unofficial corruption, and intense social manoeuvring. Scandals would erupt, be half addressed, and then quietly folded into the fabric of everyday life. Names would vanish from records, roles would shift. The city would reshape itself around whatever truth survived. Quirky fact. Some officials built secret side chambers into their tombs not to hide treasure, but to store personal journals, often encoded. Some of these writings were later found and burned, others are still being translated. And the debate? Scholars argue whether reforms in Thebes ever truly worked. Did trials like yours create real change, or just reshuffle the power so new faces could take the same thrones? Were the scribes reformers, or just smart enough to survive? You roll up your scroll, tie it in twine, and place it beside 3 others under your mat. It's not about being remembered anymore. It's about making sure someone else has a path, even if they walk it long after you're gone. You don't tell Kia about the message right away. It arrives early, slipped under your door just before sunrise, when the temple shadows are still long and lazy, and the city has that strange hush to it, as if the gods themselves are still stretching, half asleep. You wake to the sound of papyrus crinkling against the stone floor. At first you think it's just a windblown scrap from the scribe's court, but then you see the edge curled under the mat and the faint imprint of a wax seal pressed onto it. It's not a mark you recognise, not Neferu's triangle, not the red circle, not even the Queen's formal sign. It's a broken feather, snapped in the middle, burned at the tip. That alone makes your skin crawl. You sit on the edge of your mat for a long moment, heart thudding, the dawn light creeping across your wall, then you read. The letter is short, 5 lines, scrawled in hurried ink. The garden has roots beneath the palace. What bloomed in the temple was only a sprout. She's not done. They're already pruning. Burn this. You don't burn it. Not yet. Instead, you read it again, and then you bury it beneath the tiles, under the jar of forgotten chalk used to mark festival ledgers. When you finally tell Kia, 2 days later, it's because she notices how your hands won't stop shaking when you're tying off a scroll. She takes one look at your face, sets down her stylus, and pulls you out into the back alley behind the archive where the temple cats sun themselves on broken stone benches. "You're doing it again," she says. "What?" "Letting the story strangle you." You sigh, scrubbing a hand down your face. Someone sent a message, someone who knows we're not finished, that Neferu may be gone, but she didn't plant all this alone. Kia doesn't even look surprised, just tired. "Of course she didn't," she says. "She was a gardener, not the tree." "And you think the Queen," she cuts you off. "I think if we keep naming her before we're ready, we won't live long enough to find out the truth that stings, but it's fair, so you pivot." "What about Horemheb?" you ask. She flinches, just slightly. "I haven't seen him since the trial." "Neither have I." Titi thinks he might have been reassigned. "Or disappeared," Kia mutters. You don't say what you're both thinking. that someone might have tied up a loose end. Instead, you focus on the scrolls. You and Teti begin compiling a new list. Not of bribes or imports, but of patterns, names that move in and out of temple records too cleanly, offerings accepted by priests who shouldn't have been present, guest lists that include officials who'd supposedly left the city weeks before. You build timelines, cross-reference feast days with trade routes, scribes' notes with priestly rituals, and eventually a shape starts to emerge. A family, not royal, not named, not known, but always present, always watching. A cluster of interwoven lineages tied to the temple estates, not quite nobles, not quite servants, landholders, traders, priest wives, names you'd skip over unless you were looking closely. They don't speak in court, they don't host banquets, but they move goods, people, influence, a web beneath the web. Kia calls them the Ashroot. You don't know if that's a name someone gave them or one she made up herself, but it fits. Shadowy, buried, brittle on the surface, but deeper than anything you've touched before. And worse, they know you're looking. It starts with the birds, dead ones. 2 left outside Teti's apartment door, 1 on your windowsill, 1 placed neatly on top of a sealed donation jar in the archive, its wings tucked, eyes closed, body clean and cold. Kia finds a feather tucked into her robe pocket one morning. Not a full one, just the spine. You don't stop. Because now it's not about justice, it's about refusing to be silenced again. So you go further. You follow old records back through generations of temple workers. You find an elderly stoneworker who once helped build a hidden chamber beneath the Queen's Garden shrine. Just an extra place for cool storage, they told him. He swears he heard something echo down there once. Voices where there were no people. Prayers without names. You write it down anyway. You visit the papyrus makers and find a strange order from years back. Thick sheets, unusually treated, signed with the same mark as your letter, the broken feather. You write that down too, and eventually you collect enough threads to see that the temple never just served the gods, it served something else. Someone else. Historically, secret factions within temple systems weren't uncommon. When one structure held wealth, food, records and prayer, it also held leverage. Families with deep roots in the temple economy could outlive dynasties, some quietly controlling access to trade routes, marriage contracts, and festival schedules for generations. Quirky fact. The Egyptians often reused names, within families but slightly altered, adding or removing a glyph. Scholars believe this was sometimes done to intentionally blur records. One family could appear as 3 or 5, depending on how closely you looked. The debate among historians is whether these embedded networks acted as stabilizers, keeping things running while kings and queens changed, or parasites, feeding off the system's sanctity. But maybe they were both, because in Thebes, power is never just borrowed, it's inherited. You and Kia sit on the roof of the archive one night, watching the moon rise like a pearl above the river. They're not going to stop, she says. No, you agree. They'll just change faces. So what now? You lean back, arms folded behind your head. We keep the record. And if no one listens, you glance at her. Then we write louder. You start the next morning with ink-stained fingers and a list that feels more dangerous than anything you've ever touched. It's not just names now, though there are plenty of those. It's movements, habits, patterns, a web of who visits whom, who skips rituals for no stated reason, who suddenly appears on donation scrolls and then just as suddenly disappears. You and Titi spent 3 nights building this index, sometimes by torchlight, sometimes in silence so tense you could hear the scratching of your stylus, like the ticking of a death drum. You didn't plan to make a case file on the Ashroot, it just grew under your hands. Kia calls it the root book. You're not sure whether she's joking or trying to ease the weight of it. Either way, the name sticks, and now you have to decide what to do with it. The Queen's chamber remains closed to you. No surprise. Since the trial, palace access has tightened, and even temple officials with high clearance have found their requests slowed to a crawl. Still, you know the root book needs to be seen, not necessarily by her, but by someone above your reach. Someone above Neferu's old sphere. Someone who hasn't already been swallowed by this endless game of masks. Teti suggests the High Priest of Ptah, an old, careful man named Menek, who has never made a political move in his life, and has survived 3 different reigns without ever raising his voice. If we give it to him, she says, he'll sit on it like a vulture on an egg, but he won't destroy it. And if he doesn't act? Then we've buried a time bomb in his chamber, she replies. It's the best offer you get. You wrap the root book in waxed linen, seal it with the sign of Ma'at, not official, not recognised, but still sacred, and deliver it under the pretense of a festival inventory. Menek accepts it without looking up, doesn't speak, doesn't blink. You place it on his reading bench and leave before you can change your mind. That's the easy part. The hard part is waiting. Because after a storm, sometimes everything stays too still. And that silence, that pause, that's when people go missing. It starts with a scribe, a boy named Tehu who always wore too much coal and flirted with the ink girls when he thought no one was watching. He vanishes after a night shift in the lower archives. The next day, his name is quietly scratched from the temple roster. Then a temple weaver, then a minor priestess who'd spoken in the trial's aftermath. No one talks about it. You do. You make a list, a second root book, a living one, and you keep it in your boot. Because the first book might be buried. This one needs to run. You and Kia start planning, not to flee, but to broadcast. If we spread the story, she says one night, pacing your cramped scribe cell like it's a battlefield, it stops being yours or mine. It becomes public. They can kill us. They can't kill an idea. You nod. We write it like history. She shakes her head. We write it like fire. So you begin. A story. Disguised as a scroll, masked as myth. Written in second person, as if the reader were you. As if they'd lived it all. Every page filled with names, changed just enough. Timelines nudged, places blurred. But the heart, the truth, untouched. It's a gamble, but it's your best shot. You call it the garden that never grew. You plan to release one copy to each temple district. You plan to have scribes read it aloud in the market. You plan to send it south, downriver, into Nubia, into the mouths of traders and caravan riders who will carry it like windborne seeds. But you only manage one copy before the warning comes. A smear of ash across your door. No symbol, no words, just ash. You leave that night. You, Kia and Teti. No guards, no fanfare. Just quiet sandals on moonlit stone. The archive is already being watched. You hear footsteps on the rooftop as you leave. You don't run far, just far enough to breathe. Just far enough to hide the final scroll in a jar meant for pickled lotus. Just far enough to bury a second copy in the roots of the dead tree behind the western wall of the Temple of Thoth. The god of scribes, of secrets, of memory. You know they'll come for it eventually. But by then, maybe someone else will have already read it. Maybe someone else will carry it forward. Historically, revolutions in Egypt didn't always look like rebellions. Sometimes they looked like edits. New records, changed rituals, rewritten prayers. Quiet revolutions that happened in the margins, in the footnotes, in the silence between chants. The kind that no one noticed until the gods stopped answering in the old language. Quirky fact: some scribes would embed protest into poetry, using certain hieroglyphic pairings to create hidden messages, like songs that only a trained reader could hear. One discovered hymn, seemingly about the sun god, turned out to be a political satire when its bird glyphs were rearranged. The debate? Whether history is what happened, or what was allowed to be written down. Whether truth matters more than the version people repeat. Whether a scroll can change the world. You sit beneath the stars on your third night in hiding. Kia asleep at your side. Teti watching the horizon like it owes her something. You unroll the final copy of the story. You read it aloud, to no one, or maybe to someone. Because sometimes the gods are listening, even when they don't speak. You're older now. Well, not old exactly, but you've lived enough to feel the weight of years even when the calendar doesn't agree. Thebes has changed again, like it always does. The palace has a new steward. The queen no longer walks the corridors of her garden shrine, and Neferu's name hasn't been spoken in public in so long it feels like a banned hieroglyph. The scribes have turned their focus to new scandals, new gods rising in fashion, new lies to chase and truths to bury. You've stopped chasing them. Not because they stopped mattering, but because something else grew in their place. A different kind of root. The second root book, the living one, you never finished it. But others did. Teti went south after the Harvest Festival 3 years ago, carrying her own version of it on palm scrolls wrapped in layers of priestly chants. She said it would be safer in places where no one cared about temple politics, and everyone understood what a bribe smelled like. You haven't seen her since, But sometimes you hear stories from travellers about a woman in a blue shawl who asks too many questions and always pays in salt. Kia stayed. Sort of. She still runs the incense trade, though now she does it from behind a veil of official appointments and carefully arranged silences. You see her at festivals. You pass scrolls in the dark. She's not yours anymore, not in that soft, reckless way, but you've carved something permanent together. Something stronger than perfume or power. Something shaped like memory. The city's quieter now, at least on the surface. But you still sleep with a stylus knife beside your mat. You still trace the edge of your final scroll every time the wind shifts strangely, or the cats scatter too fast. Because you know better than to believe it's over. But you also know this. You were caught in a love triangle once. Yes. But not just between two people. Between desire and danger. Between truth and safety. Between what you were allowed to be and what you chose to become. And even now, years later, when the nights are long and the walls whisper softly, Thebes remembers. Not always kindly, but deeply. And in the end, that's all you ever asked for.